Good morning and welcome out to Revolution. We're going to continue on with our study in Matthew chapter 1 and verse 1. So this probably will be our final study for the moment on this verse. We've laid a good foundation, and what we'll do is we'll move on in the next study to Matthew chapter 1 verses 2, and we'll probably go through from 2 to 7 because it's mostly just a genealogical list, and so we don't want to get too bogged down in the details and minutiae of trivial things, but we also don't want to just skip over issues because sometimes having the correct genealogy, like the King James does, like the Textus Receptus does, that shows you the true Bible. Because obviously, if we believe the words of God are inspired, then we would believe that God didn't make mistakes, because God is God. And so when we have a correct Bible, we also have what would be akin to the originals. If we find something that obviously has error, like the modern versions do in this genealogical list from chapter 1 verses 2 to 17, then you can easily spot the counterfeit. Knowing that God created the heaven and the earth, and he made it perfect in the beginning, and then there was a fall, we can clearly make a distinction between what is part of that fall and what is part of God's perfect creation. And so that's got to be understood in creationist ministries as well. Because some people are looking, they're standing on a cliff looking at a sunset, and it's like, well, this isn't exactly how God created it. I mean, that cliff probably wasn't there. That's part of a global flood and things like that. And looking through the Bible issue, when you go from the originals, which we would all agree, I used to think this, I guess. I used to think we all thought that God wouldn't make mistakes in the original Bible. But apparently he does, according to Bruce Metzger and these other guys. And it just amazes me. And every time I usually give the benefit of the doubt with people, and I'm sort of saying, they wouldn't think that there's mistakes in the originals, of course. And I had to keep reminding myself, no, that's exactly what they believe. They believe there's mistakes in the originals, and that Vaticanus and Sinaiticus, the mistakes that are in there are akin to the originals. And that's why we can't have a perfect Bible today, because there are mistakes in the originals. There's mistakes in the transmission. And so we have mistakes today, where we Bible believers, we believe that, no, there's no mistakes in the originals. They're perfect. And when I'm saying originals, sometimes there's two ways that can be taken. Sometimes it's original languages, and I'm not talking about that. I am in a sense of the original documents, that they're in Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic. But I'm specifically talking about the original documents, not so much the original languages, because some people say the originals say this, and what they mean is the Berry's edition that they've got on the shelf, the original Greek or the original Hebrew. They're talking about original languages, where I'm talking about the original. So the originals have no mistakes. So it just makes perfect sense that the Bible, without silly mistakes, silly errors, contradictions, and all that, the Bible without all that would be the true Bible. The Bible, the so-called Bibles with those errors in it, are they have errors in them, and so they are not akin. They are not the same as the originals. They don't reflect the original documents. And I used to think that showing this to people, showing where there's errors in modern Bibles, showing where there's errors in modern Greek texts, I used to think that was just enough to show people that the King James was correct, that the TR was correct, Masoretic text. But it's not enough, because when you scratch past that surface and you keep digging, they believe that the originals have errors, that Matthew made mistakes in this genealogical list. So we're going to be talking about in the coming lessons. And so I just want to show you guys too that in the 1611, it had a whole bunch of prefatory material. And so I'm just going to turn the sound off here. So this is biblesonline.net, bibles-online.net. So if you go there, it takes you to this page where there's a whole bunch of really cool editions of scripture in the Reformation period and some afterwards. And these are like what you call flipping books. So you hit the page and it'll flip to the next one. And it's very, very good. Very interesting site. And so if we go to, we have the I won't go through all the introductory stuff in the King James at the moment because we're specifically talking about Matthew 1:1. But there's, to find Easter forever, certain, holy days or holidays, according to the church, Easter, Christmas, Whitsunday, and it's got all this other stuff. So, yeah, this sort of thing, proper psalms and lessons. And so, on certain days, they would read certain things. But specifically, we're looking at the genealogy. So this is almost like a little booklet. And I'm pretty sure that this booklet was in the Bishop's Bible. Now, I could be wrong there, but I do recall reading somewhere that it was in the earlier Bibles. And so people sort of got commissioned to do certain sections, like someone got commissioned to do, the genealogical information at the beginning of the Bible. And so their information was seen as definitive. So they would say, okay, let's just slot that in the beginning of the Bible. And so this is quite interesting because we are dealing with genealogical issues. So he's got, an introduction to his own little booklet here. I'll just zoom that in. Oops. So he's tracing the history. And so, I won't read through all that, but he's got 6 points here. So he's got like the lineage of the Savior, which is our principal scope. And so he's talking about, Luke, Jesus, the Son of the living God and of the Virgin Mary. So this is quite interesting. And then he has, Adam and Eve, Cain, Abel, and Seth, and their lines. So this was just normal stock standard material in the Reformation period, and this was in the beginning of the King James version of 1611. So I'll just zoom back out there. So I'm not going to go through this. Maybe I might read through this maybe next time when we're talking about the genealogical list from Matthew 1:2 to 1:17. I'll probably go through this, but at the moment, I just wanted to make you aware of what was in the 1611. So they had this type of thing. Now, I have seen material that says, "Oh, this is a Freemason symbol. This handshake, okay, with the thumb over the other hand." I mean, I think this would be an anachronism fallacy. I mean, most people who follow the whole, conspiracy of, the Illuminati and Freemasonry and things like that. I've heard people say, "Oh, this is a Freemason Bible," and all the rest of it. Most people believe, who follow that material, that Adam Weishaupt was basically the main guy behind, Freemasonry, and in a sense where he took the Illuminati to the next level. Him and the Rothschilds. Rothschilds took over the banking system. Adam Weishaupt, he took over Christianity, and what was it? Not Subtitle V. It will come to me. And so there was another guy who took over the Jewish religion. So this is in the land of, sort of making just sort of simple statements like, the Queen rules the world, or the Pope rules it. oftentimes it just depends on who you are. Because people tend to put simple solutions to what they see in the world. So it's easy to just say, okay, the CIA run everything, or the Federal Reserve runs everything, or the Queen, now she's passed away, or Prince Charles, King Charles, or he runs everything. He's the top of the pyramid, or the Pope, he runs everything, or the Black Pope, or the Jesuits, or the Rosicrucians, or the Club of Rome, or the International Monetary Fund, or Fauci, or and so oftentimes you got different characters sort of put up on this sort of pedestal. And so, but I'm not dismissing that there wasn't influence and there wasn't infiltration from these type of people. Adam Weishaupt, this other name who infiltrated Judaism is right on the tip of my tongue. Jacob Frank. Okay, so Jacob Frank, he is sort of like the hidden one. If you get into the issue of Sabbateanism and Subtites in 1666, he was seen as the Jewish Messiah. They thought a million Jews thought he was the Messiah return. And then he actually converted to Islam and created a cult. And so Jacob Frank, he was part of that type of movement. And that's why you see in Judaism, modern Judaism, you see some very occultic type of things. And so anyway, basically what I'm saying is most people think that 1776 is like a definitive year for these three main players who got together and they organized, we're going to infiltrate Christianity, we're going to infiltrate the banking system and Judaism, and we're going to have our evil plan, take over the world. How much influence they really had, who can know? If it's a secret society, a lot of it's a secret, But at the end of the day, these people really did exist. They had agendas, and just as much as you would see, people taking, Spotify taking over the music industry and just basically almost destroying, people's flourishing music careers. They're selling albums, they're selling T-shirts and all the rest of it. And next thing you know, that they're getting a check from Spotify for $10 a month, and that's it. It's destroyed their livelihood because people don't buy their albums anymore. They just go to Spotify. So that would be, a takeover, So, and obviously, Adam Weishaupt would have been with the Jesuits. So I'm saying this is hypothetical and also, from what I've heard, over the years, because you can't but hear these type of conspiracy theories. So there's one guy on the internet, and there's probably way more than that, who says that this handshake is proof that the King James Bible is a Freemason conspiracy, that King James was a Freemason, and so therefore we have an occult Bible. But the issue that I usually bring up is like, well, apparently the Freemasons didn't really become evil until the Illuminati. And so before that, the Freemasons were sort of seen as like people who looked at science apart from the church and things like that, like Francis Bacon and other people. So you'd have to really study quite hard into a lot of these people's lives. And I think it'll be an interesting study, actually. But at the end of the day, I just don't think that one picture of a hand doing a handshake is enough to sort of say, well, this is a Freemason Bible, and we just overlook the whole entire work because of this one picture. And the thing is, too, this is actually a Christian tract. So this was a separate book that was put into the front of the King James. So can you imagine if you worked hard on a book and you went, okay, well, what I want to do is I want to put some information on young earth creationism in the front of it, and someone just had this picture in the background where it was like a hand shaking like that, and that overrides all your work. So this is an older book than the King James, and they've slotted it in the front. And so it's even got its own preface. So anyway, I'm going to move on from that topic, but I just thought I'd show you that and let you know, because I might even type it in, Freemason handshake, 1611. Here we go. This guy, cutting edge. I used to debate with this guy years ago. Okay, so the cutting edge. So that's the magical handshake, apparently, So, and I've got no doubt that is a Freemason handshake. But this is the exact page that he's going to. So he's trying to make out that the King James translators are a cult. Look, it's not even. How else would you draw the thumb there? If I just zoom in a bit, let's just zoom right into this thumb. I mean, how else are you going to draw that? When you shake hands, my hand automatically, my thumb is sort of on that angle. It's, it's Freemason, and, so this guy was saying we need to get rid of the King James Bible and go to the Geneva, apparently, or something like that. And so he's got all these lists, and everywhere they've got these handshakes in the King James. So therefore, Masonic handshake. So he's done a lot of work on this. You can blow up all the pictures and have a really good look. So then he concludes, pagan Rosicrucians and Freemasons led by Sir Francis Bacon. And I've actually had people say that. I'll be talking about in-depth issues about the Textus Receptus and the King James. They're like, yeah, but what about Francis Bacon? He was, a translator. And I'm like, no. He didn't have anything to do with the King James Bible. And so there is a lot of misconception out there, and these type of, conspiracy. Now, I would consider this as a real conspiracy theory, where it's just a theory. There's really nothing of any real substance to back anything up. And now he talks about Tex Mars. So Tex Mars, he brought out these type of books. The occult symbolism, anyone, anywhere, of any time he's done that. Now, if you just pause that and put it on Facebook, I'm apparently supporting Satan. But what they don't tell you is if you go to Texas, the symbol for the Bulls football team is this. So they're like it's a symbol of a bull. It's like, so that's why you see George Bush doing that, or it's, hey, we're on the same team here, gets off the plane and it's like this, and it's like, oh, he's supporting, the rock industry, him and Lady Gaga, or, all this sort of stuff. It's so weird. I'm not saying that, some of these people aren't evil and all the rest of it, or involved with the occult, but I'm just saying there is real conspiracy and there is stupid conspiracy. And most of the time, people don't distinguish between the two. And I think people who don't distinguish between the two purposely do so. They do so because they don't really want to think about it. They don't want to argue. They don't want to look at fact. They want to just throw you into conspiracy world, Tex Mars world. And unfortunately, there is, Tex Mars, he was King James only, and so Gail Rippling at King James only. And so a lot of these types of people have this, conspiracy stuff, the kooky conspiracy stuff, and you just get thrown in that bag. So everything you're saying is coming from this type of position, where I think people who accuse you of doing that, like say the Matthew Everhard's type, that type of person, they're just intellectually lazy. They don't want to deal with people who have a good argument. When they see a good argument against their position, they're just like, how can I make a false association fallacy and make this person associated with some kooky guy? And so it's like, imagine if I was talking about the death of the Queen and someone out there had said, she's a lizard and, she died because, someone poisoned her or whatever. Just because I'm talking about the death of the Queen doesn't mean I'm talking about those things. And only someone who is intellectually dishonest would make that type of fallacy. And so that's where James White, he's an expert at doing that. Straight away will associate you with the lowest of low-hanging fruit that he can find on the internet. Someone who looks absolutely crazy, he'll just say, you're just like them. And, say that I'm a Ruckmanite, where Ruckman, taught that, if you mix the races, that you are mentally sick. And so I guess I'm going against Ruckman's teaching, because my spouse is not Caucasian, and so that I would be mentally sick according to, if I'm a true Ruckmanite, I've made myself mentally sick and knew that I was going to do that. This is how bad it gets, and this is the personal attack that these type of slanderous, oh, you're a Ruckmanite, you're a Rippling, you're right, you're a this. It's like, can't you just take me on face value? Can't you just deal with my arguments? And that's why I don't have much time for the Mark Wards and the Matthew Everhards and the Stephen Boyces of the world. I just think these guys are fakes. And anyone who slanders people like they do, I just can't picture Jesus doing this. And I can't picture the fruit of the Spirit. I wouldn't sleep at night if I was just absolutely slandering someone to the point where they are their whole life is just a total contradiction, and they are the lowest hanging fruit. And so anyway, gets me a little bit mad, but I'm just showing you where the handshake issue is in that Bible. So let's go through some of these pages just quickly. There's like 50 some pages of genealogical lists. So Japheth, Shem, and actually, I'll just go back. So this is, okay, from God, from Japheth, from Medes, from Shem. Interesting. So you got the Tower of Babel here. It's quite amazing. I mean, really, the work that's gone into this is just incredible. Xerxes, wow, he's got, through Esther. So what you see also is in the beginning of the Bible, you see the sons of Noah. So you got Ham, Shem, and Japheth. So you got Shem here, you got Japheth here. I'm not sure where Ham is. I can't see it anywhere. So anyway, it's like, okay, that's the Assyrians, that's the Persians, the Yaramites. Okay, so that's interesting. But so what they used to break all the language families into was Hamitic, Semitic, and Japhethic languages. So we would probably be familiar with Semitic languages. That's from Shem. So this is the old type of categories. Now they tend to, talk about, Proto-Indo-European. Proto is like a prototype where they don't actually have that language, but they can see, like, say, German and Hindi and Latin and Greek. They all have this common type of ancestor where there'll be certain letters like GN that appear in any word that has to do with, like, procreation, like even generation, GN, generation. And so you'll see that also in languages like Urdu, Hindi, Punjabi, over in India as well. So that was a bit of a shock for the English people to go, wow, these guys are sort of speaking a language which that has etymological roots in Latin, in Greek, in German, in French, in English. And so that's quite amazing. So these three guys were considered like, at the Tower of Babel, that they were divided into these three type of languages, or three type of subfields. And so other languages mightn't fall under Semitic or whatever. And so you'd have Hamitic and Japhethic. So that's an interesting study to do in itself. But I just sort of mentioned that would have been probably quite well thought of in this era. So here we have like the Tower of Babel. A language was divided, as Hebrew showeth in naming of the sonnet But Christ's apostles, whom the heavenly temple was built, every nation under flood their language acts. Okay, so anyway, it's a little bit hard to read that, but I just want to just give you a cursory look at all this. So then you've got a whole bunch of other genealogical lists. Reuben, Jacob, some fancy looking pictures there. Simeon. So you got the tribes of Judah, meticulously going through and showing exactly where the genealogical lists fit in. So thankfully the Jews were pretty obsessed with keeping genealogical records, and so we can trace everything back. And it seems to be something that's mocked. People are like I know, say, Eddie from Brute Facts. So I debated him on the King James issue. Now, I heard him talk with, I think it was Rob Rowe. So I've debated him as well. And they basically sort of came to the conclusion that adding up the genealogical lists doesn't show you how old the earth is and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, well, only if you've got a strange way of viewing the Bible. To me, the genealogical lists are links into the past where we can see how long someone lived for and how many children they had. So you can't just fudge these type of figures. These are very factual. You can't just say, someone was born and they died at the age of 105 or whatever, and they had 7 children, and these children, they lived for this long. You can't just make that sort of stuff up. You can't just pull that out of thin air. And so these guys, obviously, they don't take the Bible literally. If you were to pull them up on that issue, they'd say, it's probably poetry, or they just make this sort of stuff up. But if you read the Bible literally, if you haven't been influenced in postmodernism, I guess you call it, and basically modern day philosophy, you would see this as literal. You would see that these genealogical lists, you can add these things up and they're perfectly in line with what the Bible teaches about a young earth. And so, okay, so I'll just quickly go through these lists, more lists. So this is in the 1611. So David, okay, so that's before the book of Genesis. And the last page, I'll just zoom in here. So they have, Joseph, Matthew 1:16. So this is by the law. He was, or as it says in Luke's genealogy, it says that it was supposed that he was the father of Christ. So people would have just seen him as the father of Jesus. They wouldn't have questioned it. They knew Mary was the mother. They would have gone, okay, Joseph's the father. And they were already together. See, it's quite interesting. There is an issue where when the Bible is very clear about when people become joined together, okay? So when people become joined together is when they become one flesh. Now, Jesus or Paul, he was very clear about this. If you become one flesh, if you go with a harlot, you become one flesh with her. If you, have sex with your wife, you become one flesh with her. So she actually doesn't really become your wife until then. Now, that's why in Matthew chapter 1, it says he was espoused to Mary. He was the husband of Mary eventually. But until then, they were just together. There was like an engagement. And so really, if you were going to get technical with the terms, an engagement happens right up until the time when people join together. If you read through what Jesus said he said about, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. That's the joining. It's not just when you receive a piece of paper from the government that says, oh, you're officially married, or the church, goes, you are married. It's when you actually get together. Now, in the Old Testament, You know the story about the servant of, was it servant of Abraham? I think it was, yeah. Servant of Abraham, he went and found out of his own family. He sent his servant to go and find out of his own family a bride for Isaac. And so they got Rebecca. Was that right, Rebecca? I'm pretty sure. I should know these things. I used to know them. I've got a memory like a goldfish. And so he did the whole thing with, he prayed and said, God, if she comes out and waters the camels or whatever, that's the one. And then straight away she came out. And so basically he brought her back to the household, and then they just went into the tent. That's it. That's the marriage. The marriage is when you and the other person become in union sexually. That is marriage. Now, I started coming to this conclusion. I was challenged on this because I used to think, because this is quite amazing, because if you actually, if you go to Papua New Guinea or you go to Vanuatu or a lot of the islands, people they grow up with someone else. They sort of choose life partners very young. And then it's like, okay, well, then they're together. And a lot of the time there's no marriage ceremony or anything. And they're just with someone. They end up having, 5 kids, and they grow up like that. And then missionaries come along and they're like, well, what? You're not married? And it's like, well, what's that? It's like, well, it's when, we as the church say that you're married. Or it's when the government sends you a letter. And it's like, this is the type of thing, the type of Western mentality that came out of slavery, because if you were obviously, united in the United States after the Civil War, there was a lot of different rules to do with slaves. And if you wanted to marry someone who was of color, you had to get permission. That person of color had to get written permission from the government to get married. So this is where like marriage certificates started to become official, specifically in the United States. I know that you would have church records, say, before that in Europe. But you imagine if you're out there with the pilgrims and Indians and all that, and there's no priest around to marry you, or no pastor or anything like that, and you're out there for 5 years, and you're like, well, let's just settle down here. And it's like, well, we're not allowed to officially, get together, because we have to make this official. We have to get a letter from the government, or we have to, get some pastor to, wave his hand around our head or something, or, I mean, if you're marooned on a desert island and it's just you and a girl, it's like, obviously you're going to get the marriage is when you get together. And so I started studying this, and I'm completely convinced that that's what the Bible teaches. And when you get rid of the cultural mindset of how we have all these other external rules, and how we read scripture through that mindset, words like fornication, when you look at in, say, the New King James, it just has sexual immorality. And I used to see that was a mistake. And I used to go, wow, it's sexual immorality and fornication are totally different. It would be like, say, it says sodomites in the King James, but it might say, shrine prostitutes in the modern Bible. So I used to think it was a mistake just like that. But the more I looked into it, and especially with this type of mindset, I was like, no, fornication isn't sex before you get an official certificate from the government or a pastor waves his hand over you. Fornication is actually you going outside of the boundaries of the person you've chosen to be your life partner. That is fornication. And so it's quite an interesting topic. And one thing that I found going through, and I would probably never have looked at Peter Ruckman's material if I hadn't been, accused of being a Ruckmanite and all the rest of it. But I'm usually not actually vocal about this issue, but I just sort of bring it up because it has to do with genealogical issues. Peter Ruckman believed exactly what I'm saying. And I was like, wow, okay, well, that's interesting. But I came to the conclusion that I have now by myself. And that's all I've only just gone, oh, that's what Ruckman. I think someone just pointed it out one day and said, well, that's exactly what Ruckman believed. And so I looked into it, and sure enough, he believed that marriage was when they got together. It was the marriage bed. And so when you read through the New Testament, and when you read through the Old Testament as well, and you have that in mind, I can't but see that now everywhere. And it's like, that makes perfect sense. It makes biblical sense. It doesn't make cultural sense, because we have this whole thing of, okay, we're officially engaged, and you put a ring on the finger, and it's off. But if they were to go off and be with someone else, it's like, I've broken the engagement and I'm with someone else, you wouldn't say that was adultery. It's only until it's like, okay, they're together, then it's adulterous. And so there is a lot of cultural things around that. So I'm just going to go through some of these comments. Valid Core said amen. Hey, Nick and Valid Core. Hey, Docky. Well, there was still a dowry and other elements to the marriage agreement. I don't follow this position that you're making. Yeah, and I know most people don't, but I'm just letting you know what I think. So, and that's fine. It would be an interesting side issue to talk about marriage in the Bible and going through those issues. Biblical marriage is when two people agreed to be together and consummated the relationship. Yeah, and that's pretty much what I would say as well, because you would have people in society who are outcasts. You would have people who are orphans, who don't have parents, who can't afford a dowry or whatever, and they meet someone else who's in a similar situation, and they're outcasts. They can't. They're not allowed in certain parts of society and things like that, and so they get together. And I mean, do you have to have an authority wave their hand over you or give you a certificate, or is it just you are two consenting adults, and then the moment you get together, that's when, well, Paul said you become one. You can become one flesh with a harlot, actually, one flesh, where it's like you become one, and that's exactly what Jesus said. The two shall become one flesh. You leave your mother and your father, and you'll be joined. It's. To me, the process is when they join together, that's when the marriage is consummated. So an interesting sort of side issue. Hasn't got much to do with Matthew 1:1 though, but it has to do with genealogical issues. It wasn't simply two people having sex and thereby becoming married. Yeah, and that's, usually most people say that to me, and so that's where I'd say, okay, well, let's go through the scriptures and together. Image bearer, that was part of the law. That was not part of the original marriage. Sorry, fellow, I don't understand what distinction you're making. Dowry was part of the law given through Moses. That wasn't what happened before the law was given. But what's the point you're making? So yeah, obviously I've stirred, some people are sort of in agreement, some people are in disagreement, and I wouldn't expect people to agree with me on that. That has been like a side study that I've been going through for 20 years, and usually when I mention it in front of people, they just give me this look like, you are an absolute weirdo. And it is quite interesting, this whole issue. So, but I can't not see it now. I've seen it. I got challenged when I was running Christian Witness Ministries, Apologetics Ministry. I was running their website, and I started a forum, and one of the only posts that we actually got on the forum was on this issue, and I argued against it, but then I couldn't find anything wrong with what they were saying, and I was like, actually, they got a point. And I just kept going through it, and I was like, wow, I can't not see it now. It's everywhere. I see it in front of me. And then I was looking into the whole issue of, who has the authority to say, okay, you are husband and wife. Is it a marriage under God, or is it a marriage under the church, or what if you have already, gotten together with someone, and do you have to get remarried, or, and it's quite amazing. I was talking to a Seventh-day Adventist. That's terrible. Salvation Army pastor, and he said he was in Vanuatu, and there was this couple there who were in the church, and they started growing, and they were on fire for God, and they were telling their whole community about Jesus, but they'd never been married officially. And so, but he it wasn't like an issue until he just brought it up, and then he said, so where was you married? How long have you been married? And they're like, oh, we've just known each other since we were young, and we just sort of got together. And he was like, oh no, you have to get married. And they were like, why? That they had no idea about that. And so, but someone who's chosen their life partner like that, and they've already got kids and the whole thing, and then they're like, oh, so I'm doing something wrong. So, and most Christians say, yeah, you're fornicating because you haven't had someone wave their hand over you. They haven't got a certificate, and so that's fornication. And it's like, okay. And so he actually said that he didn't say that. He just said, look, just keep doing what you're doing. And they actually ordained them as pastors, or the husband as a pastor, and so I didn't even bring this issue up with him. I was just interested to hear him say that, because I've gone to places in the world where people, they don't know the Bible that well, and oftentimes there's tradition, there's all sorts of strange things involved, and usually we have these definitions of, okay, this is a definition, like say the word wine, it always means alcohol, and when we read the Bible, we've got this modern thing, oh, that's alcoholic wine. Jesus turned water into wine. And just everything is alcoholic because that's what we see in our culture today. And so when we are reading through the scriptures, many times we're looking for things with modern glasses on. So anyway, I wasn't intending on going into that, but original marriage was simply when two people agreed to be together and consummated the marriage. So I would follow that. Well, originally before the law, family members were having children. So I might just quickly go to that story. Isaac, on marriage. Isaac and Rebecca. Version. I wasn't really intending on going here, but let's just, okay, Genesis 24. Okay, so we see the whole thing. He's got the camels, to kneel down, and then he prays, and he said, the damsel who comes out, that will be the one, and then Rebecca came out. Okay, so that's exactly what I was saying. Okay, so let's go down. Here. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field at eventide, and he lifted up his eyes, and he saw, and behold, the camels were coming. So Isaac's a single guy, Rebecca's a single girl. And Rebecca lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she lighted off the camel. For she had said to her servants, what man is this that walketh in the field to meet us? And the servant had said, it is my master. Therefore she took a veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac the things that had been done. And Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and took Rebecca, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So they just went into the tent, and then she became his wife. And so, I know I could be, reading into the fact that they don't mention, a big marriage ceremony or anything like that. But it's like, but would it be a sin if they actually just, that night were together? Or did they have to get officially, official? What if Abraham was away, or for a month doing something, and they had to have to wait, or would have that been a sin? And so when you go through some of these Old Testament stories, you can just see, okay, these guys, they were just together, and that the togetherness and the one flesh thing. And see, Jesus talks a lot about this when I say Jesus, I mean the Word of God. Paul talks about this in Ephesians. He says, I might just quickly go there. So Ephesians marriage version. And this is a good topic to lose friends on, as people just go, "That's nuts," and they don't want to think about it much. And so I'm just like, okay, well, wives, submit to your husbands. Okay, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church. Okay. Okay, so it talks about us being one flesh. For no man ever hated his own flesh, so we become one flesh, but nourisheth it and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. So the whole thing about Jesus and the church is when we become born again, we become married. So he is the husband and we are the bride of Christ. So we are one with Christ. So it's an amazing thing to understand that whole thing about the marriage. We are members of his body, of his flesh and his bones. So oftentimes I teach this type of thing. And I'm like, well, Jesus is with you. It's not like in the old covenant where God was sort of outside and, when you prayed and worshiped, then he came down and all this. No, he's inside of you. It's a totally different paradigm where he's trying to come out of you. So when you go preaching, you have the power to bind and loose. You have the power to, turn the tap on and preach, or not to preach, so you can bind it or you can loose it. You have the power of God in you. And so you and Christ have become one flesh. When you breathe in, he breathes out. If you look in the mirror, it's you and Jesus looking back at you, sort of thing, because you've become one. And you and Christ are so joined as a marriage. You're just one person. So the word became flesh in Christ, but the word again is living in us. It's becoming flesh in us. So for this cause, a man shall leave his mother and father and be joined unto his wife, and they two shall become one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak of Christ and the church. So it's exactly what I'm saying here about Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife as himself. So this changes your whole Christianity when you understand that you have Christ in you. And that Christ and you, I often like it, like seeing pictures of when people, that they might just be lowly people, but they're looking in the mirror, but Jesus is in the mirror looking back at them. So that's how we're to sort of view ourselves. So I'll go through these comments and then I'll move on from this topic. I've sort of poked the bear a little bit. And the story of Isaac and Rebekah is a great picture of Christ and his bride, the church. The wedding ceremony itself is a parable Jesus used. Yeah, that's interesting. And it's interesting that we're going to have the marriage supper of the Lamb later with Christ. That's an interesting thing. I haven't really thought hard about those type of things. So perfect example of an original marriage. Eve was Adam's wife, no wedding. And that's the thing. Most of these things are just Western type of things and just cultural things. And I'm not saying a wedding's wrong at all, or that perhaps, people should go with the local customs and things like that, so as not to stir the pot. Like I wouldn't do those type of things before an official marriage. You know what I mean? Because that's seen as forbidden, and most people would just lose their minds. And but if someone, this is where some people date for like 4 years, and like on the third year they got together. Oh no, fornicated. Oh no, But they end up living together, having children together, and sometimes it can be actually just the traditions. At the moment they actually got together, they should have just gone and done a Vegas, So that's the thing. If you just get a Vegas, some guy go, yeah, okay, pay $100 and here's a marriage certificate. It's official according to God. You know what I mean? It can get down to that low that your pastor can have had a Vegas wedding, but other people who they've been around each other for 10 years and friends and all this, and then they finally they get together and it's like, that's fornication. And so this is where it becomes quite interesting to talk about. So anyway, I had no plan on talking about this, but it's just all coming out. Well, there's a lot of the stories skipped here. It wasn't that she just showed up and they had sex and they were married. And so I guess maybe I should go to 1 Corinthians 5 version. Nope. Six. Okay. Oops. Bible Gateway. Know ye not that your bodies are the members of Christ? So we're married to Christ. We're one flesh. Shall I then take the members of Christ and make them the members of a harlot? God forbid. What? Know ye not he which is joined unto a harlot is one body? So he's saying if you actually do this with a harlot, you become married to her. So it actually doesn't lessen the bar. It actually raises it and says, the people, if you're just going to, willy-nilly just go around and sleep with people, you're actually marrying. It's a big deal. This is a covenant. Sex is a covenant. And so for the two, he saith, shall become one flesh. Soon as you do that with a harlot, you become one flesh, you become married to her. But then it says, but he that is joined to the Lord, joined unto the Lord is one spirit. So when you join to Jesus, you become one with him. So if you go with the harlot, you get what she's got. She's got spots, you get spots. She's got AIDS, you get AIDS. Monkeypox, whatever it is, you get that from her. Okay. But if you're joined to Jesus, you get what he's got, which is all good. You get holiness, you get righteousness, you get so it's quite a very good study. The whole marriage thing is a great study, and to always picture yourself married to Jesus and what he gets. Because if you were to marry, like if you were a single girl and you married, Bill Gates is probably a bad example because, he just doesn't have a good reputation at the moment, especially with all the vaccine stuff going on. But just say there was a multi-zillionaire like him. If a girl marries him in a traditional old school sense, you would usually adopt their wealth. Whatever they've got, you get to use. If they've got a Rolls Royce, you get to drive that Rolls Royce. And if they've got a helicopter, you get to fly in that. And you sort of get what they have. And so that's the thing with Jesus. You get what he has. If he has all power, all dominion, all authority, you get that. You adopt that as soon as you are married to him. And so when people look at that girl, they don't see her as just some single girl anymore. They see her as, oh no, she's the wife of this powerful, if she was a wife of a mafia boss, you're like, oh, don't say anything to her. It's just like you're talking to the mafia boss. So and the same as us, the devil doesn't see us anymore. He sees Christ, and he's afraid of us because we have dominion, we have power, we have authority. So it's a great study to do. No, I wouldn't split friendship with someone over this. It's just odd in my mind. Yeah, and like I understand exactly. When I first read it, I argued against it quite vehemently and said that's just up off the wall. But then I was like, actually, I can't unsee it. And I kept trying to unsee it in the scriptures. And the more I dug, I was like, oh, now I know something that maybe I wish I didn't. Because you were following modern day tradition, not what the Bible originally taught, much that was added in the law was not part of the original design. Like what follow in truth is saying is a very interesting concept, because this has to do with dispensationalism. So dispensationalism, I'm a dispensationalist. Now there are different types. Of course, there's like mid-acts dispensationalism. I see where they're coming from, but I don't necessarily agree with them. But what I would say is say Abraham and Sarah, they were actually a half brother, half sister, which under the law was forbidden. But see, the law hadn't come yet, so it was okay because there wasn't a rule. When God made the 613 rules, then it's like you have to abide by those rules, or else if you go picking up sticks on the Sabbath, you die. Sort of thing. It's like this has just gotten away, a lot stricter than what it originally was. So there was revelation revealed, say, to Cain and Abel, that God wanted sacrifices a certain way, and Cain did his thing. Look what I've done, God. And Abel was like, no, God requires this. And so God was like, if you do good, you shouldn't be, ashamed, and you shouldn't be worried. And if you do good, it'll all turn out good. If you do bad, it'll turn out bad. So obviously what he was doing was his own thing. And so he killed his brother. So there was something wrong with him. In his thinking, he was a narcissist, and it was all about him, and he didn't even want to sacrifice to God properly. And so, but yeah, so there are things that happen before the law that are forbidden in the law. So Abraham should have been, he was guilty of sin, just his marriage to Sarah. But then the law came in because originally, we know that the original families of, Adam and Eve and their children, that they were together. And it was familial. It was, what we would call today incest. But because things hadn't degraded to the point where they are today, it was heading in that direction. So God set up the law in his perfect timing to say, okay, well, you shouldn't be with your siblings. But up until then, it was fine. That's why Abraham and Sarah, they were together. And you'll find in some countries, to marry cousins and to marry, people of the family is quite normal. Where we see that as something that will lead to abnormalities in physical appearances, and 6 fingers and 6 toes on each hand and foot and all this sort of stuff. And so that's why the Bible set this type of rule up. That's why God set this rule up. And so Bluey says amen. Image Bearer says, I pointed to the Bible in my argument, follow, but if you disagree, that's fine. Interesting that this logic, a certificate of divorce would be necessary for cases of rape. Certificate of divorce. I'm not really following how the certificate of divorce is necessary for cases of rape. Oh, yeah. Well, I guess what you're looking at is you're looking at a Jewish community. So the Jewish community, they had, like God was like, okay, write a certificate of divorce. And that was just so that people could say, hey, this is previously the partner of, my son or my daughter or whatever. They were previously married to this person. So here's the certificate of divorce. So that was, it just became an official thing. And so, yeah. But I'm going to move on from this subject, but interesting to talk about it. Let's go back to, so it ended up looking at genealogical lists. And so now what I'm going to quickly do, I'm just going to go through some of the Bibles that some of the original pictures of the Bible. So obviously we follow the Textus Receptus, and we believe it's the Greek text underlying the English. So can you imagine here, each word, imagine if it's like 3D, you could sort of peel back that word book and it's got Vivlos underneath there, or the book. It's got Vivlos written in Greek underneath there. So the underlying Greek text of these English words is what we would say is the final edition, of the TR. So the Textus, when Mark Ward says, which Textus Receptus? It's like, well, the underlying text of the King James. Now, oftentimes people, they'd have no respect for the King James. They see it as just a translation, where it's not. The King James was two things. It was a translation, but it was also the final compilation of the Masoretic text and of the Textus Receptus. Okay, so they had been doing different editions of the Textus Receptus right up until 1598. The text of Beza, that's the one that the King James guys used. But there's about 20 places where they said, look, Beza, you've done a brilliant job, but there's about 20 places where we are in disagreement. So the 60 scholars who worked on the King James, they were in agreement that those places needed to be changed, and they formulated their own Greek text. Now, they didn't print it. Had they have printed it, there would be no King James only type of movement. Scrivener, he recognized this, and he 250 years later, he did his edition, his 1881 Textus Receptus. That is, the same wording as what the Trinitarian Bible Society bring out today. But Westcott and Hort, Ellicott, they recognize that that's where that the King James translators basically formulated their own Greek text. So underneath these words lie the final edition of the TR. Now, if I was to get Beza's text, basically you're going through the entire New Testament and you're only finding 20 places where there's like, oh, that one word, oh, Beza doesn't have that, or he has a different word, and the King James translators have amended it. 20. So we're talking about absolutely splitting hairs. There's probably more typos just in Matthew. There's probably like 20 typos in Matthew. I mean, there's in the whole of the New Testament, 20 departures from Beza. So when they're like, which TR, it's sort of like they are microscopically splitting hairs here, And I always just say the Greek text underlying the King James. This was the position of the Dean Burgon Society, D.A. Waite, Kirk de Vitro. This is the position basically of the Trinitarian Bible Society. But most of these guys say, oh, and we have that edition in Scrivener. Okay, where I'm like, okay, yeah, Scrivener's is very close. There's a few tiny bits I think he unnecessarily updated, but if you were actually to translate those, they would mean exactly the same thing. And so hopefully you can follow that. So let's look at what they've got here, the genealogy of Christ from Adam to Joseph. Okay, so this is where in the original text, I'm like, okay, the book of the generation of Jesus. And so in Luke chapter 3, verse 23, it goes through that genealogical list of the Virgin Mary. But here it has the genealogy of Christ from Abraham to Joseph. Now, that's where I would disagree with this actual heading. So I don't disagree with any word in the King James and how it's translated, but I do disagree with this heading that this is a genealogy of Christ to Joseph. And so, and I believe that my former 5 studies on this show this very clearly, where I'll just go to my website here. And so if you haven't been following, Dean Burgon on my website talks quite a bit about this. So this is my Textus Receptus webpage on Matthew 1:1. So Dean Burgon clearly says what he thinks about that. There's another guy called Solomon Milan. Solomon Milan, he writes about 30 pages on just this issue. I've basically typed in about 2 pages worth. I've got to get back onto that. But he has a book here, The Plea for the Received Text. And it's a very interesting book written in 1869. And he goes through that issue. He's got another issue written about the 1881 text that he goes through. And so I actually made a separate page specifically dealing with Solomon Caesar Milan, because he seems to come to exactly the same position that I do. And I've copied in his issues here. So you can go through and you can look at all those pages, and that will tell you exactly why I believe that generation is the word there. And this has nothing to do with the genealogy that follows from verse 2. So what is my position? I'll explain it by looking at Matthew 1. Okay. So here's the chapter in Matthew 1. So, starting off the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. For me, that is a standalone verse. That is like a title, just like in the Gospel of Mark, and I'll open it up for you. In Mark, it just says, we'll read it as it comes up. The beginning of the Gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And then it has, as it is written in the prophets, and it talks about John the Baptist coming and the prediction of him. And then it talks a lot about John the Baptist. Then it talks about Jesus coming. And so this verse here, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, is like a title. Okay, so we can see this also in Luke, where it says, I think it's about 3 or 4 verses. For as much as they have taken, I'll actually enlarge in these because I know that you guys can't see that. For as much as many have taken in hand to set forth in order a declaration of those things which are most surely believed among us, even as they delivered them unto us, which from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word, it seemed good to me also, having perfect understanding of all things from the very first, to write unto thee in order, most excellent Theophilus, that thou mightest know the certainty of those things wherein thou hast been instructed. So then it goes on to Elizabeth. So this is his intro. Okay, so he has a 4-verse intro. And then when we look at the Gospel of John, he has his own little intro. Before he starts talking about John the Baptist. So he has, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, the same was in the beginning with God. So then he goes through to verse 5. All things were made by him, without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. And then he starts talking about John the Baptist. There was a man sent from God, his name was John. And then he talks about the relationship with John with that light. Okay, he was not the light, but he was just, sent to talk about the light. And then, so you have like a basic sort of intro up to verse 5. Okay, so that's what I'm saying with Matthew 1 is this is an intro. The book of the generation, the entire book of Matthew, of all that Jesus Christ generated, all that Jesus Christ did, his childhood, or all that followed after Jesus, and so he did miracles, he healed the sick, he raised the dead, he cast out demons, he discipled men, he fed the 5,000, he did all these things, he raised Lazarus from the dead. Then he died on the cross, and then he made the church. And then we are part of the generation of Christ, of what Jesus did, because we are the church. And so what he did back then, it still has ramifications to us today. Here, we can become Christians. Christ lives inside of us. So he's still producing things through us. He's still generating his life through the church and through us. So the book of the generation, the book of everything that Jesus Christ did. So the book of the historical narrative of Jesus, the book of how he made the church, the book of how that is continued on to today, so it makes this of the generation of an amazing word. I'm in awe at how the word of God just explains something just in one word. The book of the generation of Jesus Christ. So this is the genitive. This is part of, it's the book about Jesus. It's a bit like when people read the book of Revelation. It's like the revelation of Jesus Christ. So they're like, this reveals Jesus. It's like, no, you just got to understand the old English. It's the the book about what Jesus Christ has revealed. So I heard a guy the other day, I think it was Stephen Boyce actually, he was talking about the revelation, and he was saying, all revelation is to reveal Jesus. Well, all the Word of God reveals Jesus, but this is specifically an unveiling of the future. It's not just an unveiling in there. Hey, there's Jesus behind the curtain, sort of thing. He is there, but it's not. That's not the title. It's. I'll just quickly read that because it'll make more sense if we just go straight to the source. Revelation chapter 1, verse 1. The revelation of Jesus Christ. So people, many times they're doing a study and it's like, oh, this is a revelation of who Jesus is. So then they sort of spiritualize everything. They'll get halfway through the book of Revelation. How do we know more about Jesus in this verse about the scorpions stinging people? It's like, it's not all about the character of Jesus, you know what I mean? And so you would usually paraphrase this, this is an unveiling which Jesus Christ unveiled, which God gave to him to show unto his servants. So he's showing it to his servants. Things which might shortly come to pass. When it says shortly, that's the Greek word tachos. I noticed in Stephen Boyce's facts program the other day, he said that it means quickly come to pass. So oftentimes people read through that and they don't even do word studies or anything, and oftentimes that they're looking at new Bibles which say these things must come to pass quickly, or and so it's got to happen in the next 5 generations, or it's should have happened by 70 AD or whatever. But it's actually not talking about this whole scenario is gonna come to pass very soon, like in 4 months time, or 3 years time it's going to happen. No, it's like this is going to come to pass suddenly. It must suddenly come to pass. So that means we're going to go 2,000 years, then suddenly all this in the book of Revelation is going to occur. He sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John. So just knowing the words, what they mean. I mean, in 1611, it was perfectly normal for, these things must shortly come to pass. So they must suddenly come to pass. That the word tachos there, we know a tachometer in your car. It's to do with something happening very quickly, or, explaining, something that suddenly just happened. So anyway, I'm just showing you some introductions. So this is an introductory verse with a full stop at the end. Okay. Then from verse 2 all the way down to verse 16, or probably including 17 because it's a summary, that is the genealogy of Joseph, not of Jesus. If it's a genealogy of Jesus, this guy, Jeconiah, he was told that no one from his lineage would sit on the throne of David. So if this is a genealogy of Jesus, it's pretty bad. It actually comes against the virgin birth and everything. But when you understand it, the correct, I guess you would say, semantic range, this is a summary verse of the whole book of Matthew. And then it's like, okay, by the way, we're talking about Jesus Christ, who's the son of David, and he's the son of Abraham. By the way, let's talk about, firstly, just like they did in John the Baptist, they talked about John the Baptist. The other one was talking about Elizabeth and, John the Baptist's parents and all that. Let's go a little bit further back than that, and let's talk about Joseph and his lineage. And so Matthew goes through his lineage, and he would know that he's speaking about people who are cursed. Then he becomes the stepfather of Jesus. So there's no true genealogical link to Joseph, from Joseph to Christ. Then it goes on to the historical narrative. The birth of Jesus Christ was like this, and talks about the miracle of the virgin birth. Now, if we go to Luke chapter 1, I was just there a minute ago. We'll crack that open again. So Luke chapter 1. No, actually, it's in chapter 3. So I'll just go up the top here and type 3. And it shows the genealogy. And I wanted to look at this anyway, because the marginal note in the 1611 says Luke 3:23. Okay. So when it has generation. So it's not specifically pointing to all of this list, but it's pointing to the genealogical list in Luke 3, which is at the end of the chapter. Now look at this. It says, and Jesus himself began to be about 30 years of age, okay, being as was supposed the son of Joseph. So, as was supposed. So what happened, now I do explain this on my website, so I'm just going to go back to Matthew 1, and I'll quickly type in Mary. Now, I did go through this, and one of you guys gave me some more information, and I haven't put it in there. I've just been so busy. So Jesus was clearly adopted by Joseph, the husband of Jesus' mother Mary. So in any case, Jesus was a physical descendant of Abraham because he was conceived of Mary. Mary, whose father was Eli, was descended from Abraham. So that's the Luke thing, Luke chapter 3. The assumption that Abraham can only have descendants through males is simply mistaken, as can be seen in the case of Zelophehad. And so I know that there was another case which seemed very clear. And it's quite interesting, yeah, in the prophecy that is in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, it talks about her seed, not his seed. I mean, that's quite amazing that this type of prophecy was made about Mary's seed. And so, and in Galatians, book of Galatians, it talks about, now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not to seeds, plural, as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed singular, which is Christ. So it's quite interesting. The seed back in Genesis was Christ. And this seed, it's interesting in Galatians, it says, it just talks casually about some things, and then it has Jesus Christ born of a woman. I mean, aren't all people born of a woman? Unless you redefine what a woman is. It's quite crazy what's going on in this generation today. But born of a woman, that was a specific thing, that the seed of the woman. And so this is talking about the virgin birth and things like that. So so obviously we'll talk about this more when we talk about the genealogical list from chapter 2 to chapter 17. We're going to be talking about that next week. And going through the names and all that. And so what I'll do is I'll show you exactly why or how Mary's genealogy, or the genealogy in Luke chapter 3, how that matches up with Matthew's, and what exactly is this genealogy. And basically it's to do with the son-in-law. So we're going to see that. Joseph, he sort of, because Mary was the sole inheritor of her father's wealth, then Joseph sort of became adopted into her family, which is quite interesting. And so that's why there can be confusion about this. But there is some good information done by actually Answers in Genesis on this. And so when we're going through these genealogical lists, we don't want to get too bogged down in the one in Luke, but I do want to describe it, because this can be an area where atheists and some critical text people, they make a big fuss about these lists not matching up and all this sort of silliness. So we'll go through and we'll look at those as well. Okay, so so where was I going? I was going from here. Okay, why I showed you the King James sort of first is because that is where we believe that we can find all the words of God. Okay, if I was to get a Greek Bible, I'm matching it up to here and going, okay, is that word in there? Okay, regardless of how it's translated, whether it's an old word or an archaic word, an obsolete term or a false friend or whatever, it's like, are the words there? Because this is where we believe that the King James was the first time where all the words were compiled in one place, apart from the originals. Now, there might have been early in history, or there might have been texts throughout history that they actually did this, but we don't have that evidence with us today. But what we have in the age of printing, because you had printed text, but they weren't perfect. You still had to sort of go to a manuscript here and there and find it, and like the critical text guys are still doing. But we believe that in 1611 they nailed it. They were able to go through it, all the information they had, and they nailed every word in every place. And pretty much Beezer had done that in 1598 in the New Testament anyway, except for 20 places. But the King James guys went, look, there's about 20 places you've overlooked here. Let's clean that up. And now they've got a perfect text, but they did it in English. Had they done it in French, I'd go to that Bible. Had they done it in German, I'd go there. But thankfully, they did it in English, and I just so happen to speak that language. So it works out good for us. And as I mentioned, this is a picture of Neptune, but this exact picture is in the Bishop's Bible. So it doesn't seem like they had a problem with the letters sort of portraying gods and mythical creatures and all this sort of stuff. It was just part of the society back then. I guess these was seen like the Avengers or something. It was like, well, let's put this fancy letter T there with this in it, and people weren't bothered by that. Obviously, if it appears in the Bishop's Bible, so I'll just show you where that similarity is. So that's the King James there. That's the Bishop's Bible. So it's exactly the same. It's got the Poseidon, with the trident and the letter T there. Okay, so interesting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through some of these Bibles. Now, I'm not going to go through the German and the Latin and all that. So we've gone through some of Erasmus's material. We've gone through the Greek and stuff. But I'm going to show you the Hutter polyglot because that's interesting. But I wanted specifically to go through the English. Now, I tried to find the beginning of the Bible in Wycliffe's, and it was very hard. And I'm not sure if these books are, this might be the book of Genesis or something like that. And it's like, or apparently it is the New Testament. But I went through like about 30 pages. It just seemed like a huge, big introduction where I just found words that just aren't simply talked about, talking about the creation and a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's like, so there's 819 pages. So if you want to go through that, I'm going to turn these flipping noises off because that might really irritate you. So yeah, if you want to find out exactly where the first page of Matthew is, now someone's figured it out, obviously, but I haven't yet. So that's the Wycliffe Bible. So we're looking at 1390 there. So there's a 1382 edition, a 1390 edition, 1392, I'm pretty sure it is. So yeah, very interesting, and interesting history as well, because this is in English. Okay, so let's move on. So we've got the, I'm pretty sure this is the Coverdale. Yes, it is. Whoops, I've zoomed in instead of doing the sound. Let's have a look at the Matthew 1 here. We'll just zoom in. Okay, so he has the genealogy of Christ and marriage of. So notice that similar thing. I would not put that title on. If I was to put titles in my Bible, I would have the introduction to Matthew, and then I would have the genealogy of Joseph above chapter 1, verse 2. Okay. So here it says, this is the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Okay. So Luke chapter 3, and it's got D there because this is obviously before before verse. So they had the chapters, and it's quite interesting. The chapters, even Paul said in is it the second Psalm or something like that? So that they knew chapter divisions. Paul knew chapter divisions, but not verse divisions. That was done by Stephanus. Okay, so we're looking at the 1537 Bible. So this would be Matthew's Bible. I'm pretty sure. We can go back here and have a look anyway. Yeah, the Matthew's Bible, 1537. So I'm going to shut these pages as I go through. Okay, so let's zoom in. So this is the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So it's got the letter A here. After ye, I'm not sure what that says there. Hebrew, Heb. Joshua is Savior, or Yeshua is Savior. So they're just explaining what the name Jesus means. Here it has David and Abraham were first rehearsed because that Christ was specially promised unto them to be their seed. And yeah, I'm not sure what that word is there. Genesis. Okay, Genesis RRVII. Okay, so it's got the, or is that an XX? Maybe it's Genesis 28 or something like that. So yeah, quite hard to read that type of font, but you can see they had these fancy letters here as well. So that's in the Coverdale Bible. So here's a picture of Matthew, and we're going to do a study into who wrote Matthew. I believe Matthew did, of course, but there is argumentation against that, by people like Bart Ehrman. I noticed that Jonathan Sheffield yesterday did a debate on who wrote the Gospels, so that's an interesting one. I think that's on Myth Vision. If you go there, you can look at what he's done. I haven't watched it. Okay, so we've got the Great Bible. I'm pretty sure the Great Bible was in 1539. So these guys have put this in 2 years later, but and that's fine. Okay, so let's just zoom in here. Okay, we can zoom right in. The Gospel of Matthew, the first chapter, the genealogy of Christ and the marriage of his mother Mary. The angel satisfieth Joseph's mind. Okay, so this is the book of the generation, and I was doing a study last night. Usually the line above an O or a U in the Latin meant there was an M at the end. So here it's just an N in English. So it was just the way that they did it back then. This is the book of the generation, and so the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And it looks like it's just Genesis, Joshua, Genesis. And so it's just got a bunch of cross references there in the margin. Very fancy letter T there. Looks more like a C. So that's a fancy one there. I guess the Freemason conspiracy guys would say, "Oh, it's got Nazi symbolism here too." You know what I mean? That's what I was saying before about the anachronistic, conspiracy theory type of thing of the Illuminati handshakes being in the King James. Anyway, let's move on. So here we have the 1549. So this is actually 1549. Matthew Tyndale Bible. Okay, so it must be the Matthews and the Tyndale together. Yeah, side by side. So here you have on one side, or anyway, let's have a look at it. So I'm not really sure what it is, but we're looking at it anyway. The genealogy of Christ, like I said, I wouldn't put that there. This is the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So it looks exactly like what we were looking at earlier in the Coverdale. So he's got A here and a star, but it doesn't seem to sort of go anywhere with that. So maybe at the end of the chapter they have what those are, because it doesn't seem to be on the same page. Oh yeah, here we are, notes, the notes down here. After Hebrew, Joshua is Savior, David, Abraham. Okay, so I read that before. So this is the Matthew's Bible. Okay. It's just the 1549 edition. Okay, so here we have the 1551 edition, and that is the Tavernier's Bible. Okay, let's have a look at this. Okay, so it's got an introduction to the reader. We'll skip past that. But that would be an interesting thing to look at. I've read through the translators to the reader in the Bishop's Bible, which is quite interesting because it bases much of what they say on the verse where Jesus says, ye read the scriptures, no, search ye the scriptures, for in them they speak of me. And so he's saying to the Pharisees and the scribes and the Jewish people who hated him, he's saying, read the Bible. Where in the New King James it says, you search the scriptures, saying that they're already reading the scriptures. So one, he's saying, hey, read the Bible. The other one's saying, oh, you've already read the Bible and they speak about me. The words speak about me. And it's like, so in the Bishop's Bible, in their introduction, in their preface, it's saying it the way that the King James says it, or all the Reformation Bibles say it, search ye the scriptures. So it's the only place in the Bible where it actually tells us to search the scriptures. I mean, it does in other places in a roundabout way, but that's totally mutilated in the New King James. And so, but these introductions are very interesting to look at, and you can get a lot of historical context of when, how these Bibles were written and what was happening in their age. Okay, so it has a bit of a note here. So, Gospel of St. Matthew, he became a preacher, a leader of. I can't read that. Turning my head sideways, which is always a good look. As touching the evangelists, ye, I'm not even sure what that word is, see in the New Testament clearly what they were. First, Matthew, as ye read Matthew, Mark, Luke, was one of Christ's apostles, and was with Christ all the time of his preaching, and heard his own self almost all that he wrote. So that's a pretty good note. It's bolstering faith, saying, Matthew was a disciple of Christ, and so he knew what Jesus said. The Gospel of St. Matthew, that is to say, the glad tidings. So these are the type of notes which I think are great footnotes. There's a bit of an argument, Matthew Everhard is like, every Bible's had notes. Well, yeah, some of them aren't helpful, and they're the ones people are talking about. These are helpful notes. They're explaining to people that they're realizing that there are laymen who are going to read this and they don't have the time to go and study all these things out. So it's just a little note just saying, hey, Matthew was a disciple of Christ. And because some people will be like, who's Matthew? And they don't understand these things. So here it has the first chapter, that he may prove Jesus to be the Messiah, whom the prophets prompted, he counteth his genealogy even from Abraham, which describeth the something of Mary, assurance of Mary, and Joseph, and then it goes on about later on about Joseph through the Holy Ghost, Joseph warned by an angel, etc. So, as I mentioned, I would say that verse 1 isn't part of the genealogy. From verse 2 is, and it's not a genealogy of Christ, it's a genealogy of Joseph, but it was the seeming genealogy of Christ. This is the book of the generation of A, and it's just going to Luke 3 D. So that would be 23 there. Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Okay, so let's move on from there. Now, this is the first Bishop's Bible. First Bishop's Bible was done in 1557. It was just the New Testament. Now, I'm amazed at the font. To me, this is just so good. It's so readable. Okay, so I won't read through everything like I did in the previous one, but he's got pretty much the same as what the King James says, the genealogy of Christ, who was conceived by the Holy Ghost, born of the Virgin Mary, when she was betrothed to Joseph, etc. So the book, so you can see how clear this is. And you have the letter T here, with some sort of guy, he's shooting a snake, and there's a bird about to chew the snake's head off. And the book of the generation, and notice it's got the O with a line above it, the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Now, what you'll notice is the J's in the earlier Bibles are the letter I, the capital letter I for the names. And so you won't find the letter J oftentimes. See, that letter I is the same letter as Isaac. And some people even think that Jesus was pronounced Jesus or Jesus, or that I letter wasn't so much a J letter. It later on became a J. But sometimes what can happen with phonetics, phonetics is basically the linguistic term for how words are sounded. You can have something worded in a certain way, and the spelling can reflect that. But then later on, because people don't know those type of customs, if they see a J there, and you're in the back blocks of Australia or America or wherever you are in the world speaking English, you just see a J and you say Jesus. So instead of saying Yeshua, you say Joshua. So we just have this distinct J sound that's sort of appeared. And I think a lot of it is because we English people seem to be quite literate and focused on books. There was a huge renaissance in England during the Reformation period that happened with, basically England became the place to go to for literature. You have Shakespeare, the King James Bible and all that. And so people reading through books seeing the letter J, just put a strong J sound in front of these. But we might look at something like hallelujah, but and it's spelled hallelujah. And so there are remnants of the J, sort of it warrants being an I. It's an interesting debate and chat. A lot of people talking about that sort of thing. But I just sort of point this out. It says that Jesus is the Messiah, which was promised to the fathers to be the Savior. Okay, then it has, this is the rehearsal of the progeny, whereof Jesus Christ is sprung according to the flesh. So he's making that distinction, saying, okay, this is a genealogical list of Jesus according to the flesh, not according to how it was viewed. Okay, people viewed it this way. And the other note, son of David here, is so called for that he came from the stock of David. And then these two are rehearsed because Christ was especially promised to come of their seed. So it's talking about Abraham and David. And therefore Christ commonly was called the son of David. So they've got their, their notes there and everything. And I just think with the information that I've given in my previous videos, showing what Dean Burgon says, showing what Solomon Milan said and other people throughout history, that some people probably just didn't see that this verse was a standalone verse, as like a bit of a heading. So we can see that Abraham here is Abrahah with the lines of Abraham. So I'm not sure why they did that, probably just stylistic. So that is the first Geneva Bible. That was done by William Whittingham, I'm pretty sure. William Whittingham. Maybe it's got it written here. I might just click on that. It might give us some more information. No, it doesn't. Oh, introduction. The Genevan New Testament with the marginal actually, here I was thinking that this is exactly how it looked, and this is a later edition. It's a facsimile, or maybe it is how. No, I think that's how it was. It does look very clean for its day, though, doesn't it? Yeah, I could be mistaken. Maybe they've just cleaned it up so you can actually read it. I've oftentimes said, "Wow, the 1557, the font was good. Everything was good about it. They even had the type of italics that we would use in modern Bibles, and that's because it's probably not exactly as it was." Okay. Yeah, interesting. You got an introduction there. These introductions, sorry, I'll turn that off, that sound. These introductions are very interesting to go through. They just give you a snippet into the state of Christianity at the time, because a lot of these guys were exiles in Geneva. The argument for the gospel, talking about Matthew. So it's an exact and accurate representation of the 1557. Very interesting. Okay, it's interesting. It's got a thing written by John Calvin. Christ is the end of the law. Quite a lot written by Calvin in that Bible. To the reader, mercy and peace through Christ our Savior. So this is written to the reader of this Bible. An argument for the gospel. And then the page we were looking at. It does look very clean, though, and very modern, doesn't it? Anyway, fascinating. I'll be going back there and visiting that one and checking that out. Okay, so then we look at the Bishop's Bible. Okay, so we end Second Maccabees. So we can clearly see that these books of the Apocrypha were in all those older Bibles of the Reformation period. Okay, so a preface to the New Testament. So you've got a preface in the original, in the beginning, in the preface to the entire Bible. Then you've got a preface to the New Testament here. So let's have a look at this. Now, we've already sort of looked at some of this, but we want to just check out any other material around it. And he has the genealogy of Christ from Abraham. So I would just change that to number one, the book of what Christ did, and then I'll add verse 2, the genealogy of Joseph from Abraham. And to me, that would make more sense. So here it has, that is the rehearsal of Christ's lineage and life. Okay, this is the book of the generation of Jesus Christ. With Neptune there, of course. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. I'll just zoom that out. And so I'm guessing that that's Matthew there, and he's an angel, or yeah, there's an angel there. There's the Holy Spirit. So interesting. Okay, that looks very different to that in verse 2. That W looks like it gets smaller. Maybe that's just the beginning of the actual book. Okay, so I thought I'd look at the Spanish one, not that I can read it, but just so we can get a bit of a taste of what was happening in foreign Bibles. Looks like it's a very similar sort of thing. Here we have, these kids, like these cherubims, sort of look like adult kids just in the nude in the front of a Bible. This was just normal in the Reformation. I mean, you imagine bringing this sort of thing out nowadays, like a realistic picture of a kid, like just totally in the nude walking around. You'd be seen as like a cult leader. But it was just, that they had a different mindset back then. So here we have the 1583. So this is the Geneva Bible, because Geneva Bible New Testament was written in 1557. Then the whole Bible was done in 1560. And so there was lots of editions that came out of that. So this is one of the better editions, and it's also in like the similar sort of font as the King James. Notice the T there; it's got like some sort of horse or maybe a dragon and a shield. Okay, so they give a lot of notes here, and so that's. But it's probably the same notes that were in the earlier editions, just all crammed together in one page. The genealogy of Christ, that is the Messiah promised to the fathers. Okay. So then we've got the Luke 3:23 linked there. This is the rehearsal of the progeny of where Jesus Christ is sprung according to the flesh. So that's pretty much exactly what was written. Okay, that's what was written in the 1557. The book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward here. The notes just sort of go down explaining the genealogy that happened. Okay, but I might read this one. So it has C here, and I've read that. And then it has D for son, so called for that he came from the stock of David. Okay, of David. So we've got an E here. These two are first rehearsed because Christ was especially promised to come of them and their seed, and therefore Christ commonly was called the son of David because the promises were evidently confirmed unto him. Okay, so then there's some verses there. So it was a little bit different to the other one. By incestuous adultery, the which shame setteth forth is great humility, who made himself of no reputation, but became a servant for our sakes. Okay, so that's the F. So we've got E, and then where is F? So it must be talking about a bit of Ruth. Maybe it's up here. Uriah. I can't see the F there. There it is. Zara of Thamar. So interesting. Okay. So it's just got a note there. Let's move on. Let's look at the Hutta, the Dodecaglot, the 12-language Bible. I'll turn that noise off. Oops. There we go. Maybe I went a bit too far there. There's a lot of introductory material on this one as well. So, but not as much as the others. Let's just go back a few pages. Matthew chapter 1. Here we go. Zoom in. So I did show this in a previous video, but I just want to show you today. Biblos Genesios Jesu Christu, we are David, we are Abraham. So then we have, I think it's like Italian, perhaps. We've got Hebrew and Syriac. So Syriac is Aramaic. That's the language that Jesus would have spoken. Now, Tremelius and Hutta, they both did editions of the Syriac, but they put it into Hebrew lettering. So I think we got Spanish and Portuguese, perhaps. Then over the other side, we have the English, the Book of the Generation of Jesus Christ, the Son of David, the Son of Abraham. We have the Latin here, and then we have a few other, Bohemian and German and Dutch and other ones, Polish, I think it is. So it's quite an interesting Bible to go through and look at. And so that's in 1599. So all the ones that I've just shown you would have been in the laps of the King James translators. So they would have all been looking at all of that information. Okay. And yeah, of course, here we've got the King James as well. We've already looked at that. And this one here is, oops, I'll just see. This is the Wycliffe New Testament. So someone's gone through and deciphered, which I attempted to do. Let's have a look at this. This site's amazing. The Book of the Generation of Jesus Christ, the Son of David, the Son of Abraham. And usually, if you just speak with a Scottish accent, it's like the Book of the Generation of Jesus Christ, the Son of David, the Son of Abraham, or something like that. That's terrible. But so then it's got in verse 2, Abraham begat Isaac, or gendered, from the gendered for the gendered. Interesting. I can't really read exactly what that is. Manuscript collation, Magdalene, Cantab, Sydney collation, Cantab. So I guess that's Canterbury. So that's what Wycliffe has there. So what edition that is, I'm not exactly sure, but it's interesting. It's got some footnotes. So yeah, let's move on from there. So this is the Hexapla. This is quite an important edition of old Bibles. So it's got Wycliffe, Tyndale, Kramer, Geneva, and others. So you can compare side by side. And the Textus Receptus here is the 1550 edition. So Vivlos Genesios Jesu Christu, we are David, we are Abraham. But notice it hasn't got the beta there, or David. So it's actually, it has a note here. Received text, David. So Wycliffe, the Book of the Generation of Jesus Christ, the Son of David, the Son of Abraham. Tyndale, this is the Book of the Generation of Jesus Christ, Son of David, the Son also of Abraham. Kramer, 1539, this is the Book of the Generation of Jesus Christ, the Son of David, the Son of Abraham. And then over to Geneva, 1557, the Book of the Generation of Jesus Christ, the Son of David, the Son of Abraham. The Reims, 1582, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham, and then the King James, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham. So no one can accuse me of not knowing that verse by heart. Okay, so let's just look at some of this chat that's been happening behind the scenes. Did the two people agree to be together in the case of rape? So I guess that's where, in the case of rape, the person was to be killed. And so once they were killed, then the other person was free. So I guess that was the law. I suppose that's the first time I've heard that argument, so I'm just sort of throwing that out there. That's what came to mind. So where is that distinction made? Sorry, I should have been following this. I didn't realize there was so much chat happening behind the scenes, but I did have to move on from that issue because it is really about Matthew 1:1. You seem to be very strongly situated on this follow. There's nothing I can say that will suit you. So we'll just agree that we see differently here. Follow in truth. Where the woman, Rebecca, agrees to be Isaac's wife, then they consummate the relationship. Well, he doesn't say they're married. The issue is that they're becoming one flesh without commitment. Eisegesis, sexual immorality. What does a wife mean? Did you say Rebecca and Isaac were siblings? No, I don't think I did. I said Abraham and Sarah were siblings. Did God condemn David and Solomon for their many wives? Well, it's written in the Bible. One of David's favorite verses was, "Some trust in horses, some trust in chariots, but we shall trust in the name of our God." Or he says that in the Psalms, and that is a reference to Deuteronomy, where it says, "Do not lay up for yourselves like standing armies, just trust in God." But and so David knew this. He was like, "We're not going to have this huge army. We're just going to trust God," And obviously, a guy who killed Goliath like he did, he believed in the power of God to help. But then the very next verse was, "Ye shall not multiply for yourselves wives," and it's talking about if they ever did have a king, and so he wasn't to multiply armies, and so say like in America they've got standing army, a huge, massive standing army, just ready at any moment to basically blow any country into smithereens. And so so David knew this verse, and so David knew that he shouldn't have had more than one wife. And look at what problems happened with that, with Bathsheba, with the murder of Uriah and all this sort of stuff. And so an interesting study, and a very a subject that affects all of us, because we all at some stage usually this affects us. And it's interesting. I might just quickly go to where Jesus, mother and father, leave KJV. Okay, so Mark. I might just go to Mark 10. 10 KJV. Here. It looks like it's in verse 7. For this reason, shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. So then they are no more twain, but one flesh. Okay. So they are not two, but they're one. Okay. What therefore God has joined together, let not man put asunder. And in the house his disciples asked him again of the same matter, and he saith unto them, Whosoever shall put away his wife and marrieth another committeth adultery against her. Okay. And if a woman shall put away her husband and be married to another, she committeth adultery. Now, that's not the exact verse that I was looking for, so I might look at Mark 10:7. 10:7 in, say, Bible Hub. Cross references. Maybe it's Matthew 19. I just saw that come up. Yeah. I'll just go to King James. Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? And he answered and said unto them, Have you not read that he that made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man put asunder. They say unto him, Why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and to put her away? He saith unto them, Moses, because the hardness of your heart suffered you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say unto you, whosoever shall put his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, okay, committeth adultery. So fornication is when you marry another, you're with another person, you commit adultery. And whoso marrieth her which is put away doth commit adultery. Okay. His disciples, now notice this, his disciples said unto, this is the bit that I wanted to get to. I was just reading through that because it's sort of related. His disciples say unto him, if the case of a man be so with his wife, he is not good to marry. But he said unto them, all men cannot receive this saying, save or except they whom it is given. Now listen to this. He talks about people who can't have sexual union. For there are some eunuchs which are so born from their mother's womb. You know, they can't, they don't have the proper mechanics to do what needs to be done. And there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs from men. So you know, sometimes they're slaves, and you know, we know in those days that this used to happen. And there be some eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. So like Paul, he was like, well, I'm a single guy, and he says he should remain single and just be with God, you know, rather than take care of your wife and all that sort of stuff. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. Okay, so when he's talking in the context of marriage, you know, divorce, and then he goes straight into, you know, some people, they can't have sex because they were born that way. Some people were made that way by men, and some people have actually made an oath to God, like Paul, who they want to just serve the kingdom of God in that sense. And so obviously, like Paul could have, you know, married someone and you know, been with them or whatever, and not had that union, I guess. You know, I guess I'm just pulling things out of the air with that, but yeah, it's an interesting thing to think of in the light of what I've been saying. So Image Bearer says, yes. So this has all happened like an hour ago. Deuteronomy 17:14 to 17. Long story short and question, can we believe every word of the Holy Bible, authorized King James Version, is the word of God and preserved without error? Yes. TR, yes, the King James Version is the final edition of the TR. What is the Old Testament text that underlies the King James Version? That is the Hebrew Masoretic text. And so the King James translators did their own edition of the Masoretic text. And so that has yet to be made, I guess, by a group like, say, a Scrivener type of group. They haven't attempted to do that. So Questions above, thanks. So they're pretty easily answered. Mostly the Masoretic text. I actually believe the Holy Bible, Authorized King James Version, even the editions, are all preserved and without error. And I understand that publishing companies have messed with a few things, but that's their problem. Yeah, I would say very much the same thing. Usually it's just a print error or things like that. But people know that it was in 1611. Some things were cleared up. Sometimes they actually introduced italics that were unnecessary and things like that. But as a whole, the words have been very stable. The reason Matthew wrote his genealogy, so this is following truth, was to show that Joseph was not or could not be the father of Jesus. Exactly. And so that's part of what they teach in Answers to Genesis, which is exactly what I teach and believe as well, that it was basically the genealogy there is like this bad genealogy. And it's like, this is the genealogy of Joseph. They just sort of hit on a few major players. They make it out up to 14. I guess maybe that was their limit in how they were to go through it, rather than write absolutely every detail right back to every single person that list. It was just sort of like, let's hit on the main players and just talk about people who are of substance. And so it mentions Jeconiah, and no one from that lineage was able to sit on the throne of David. So that would have been quite interesting. And perhaps some of the Pharisees knew this and were like, how can this guy come from Joseph? Joseph's lineage is this and that, and they're going through that. And perhaps, this could have been a reason or an accusation against Jesus. It's quite interesting. That was me. 1 Chronicles chapter 2. Yes, it was following truth, where Sheshan had no sons, but his genealogy is continued through his daughter, Ali. Yeah, thanks for that. So I will go back through those videos and glean all that information. Verse 31, where we're told that the name of Sheshan's daughter, the word translated as children in the Hebrew is Ubenai, which means son. Wow, very interesting. Was an interesting debate. So that must be the one with Jonathan Sheffield. Dr. Robin Walsh didn't really present anything new against the authorship of the Gospels that hasn't been asserted before. And this is what I'm finding. Even the debates that I'm doing, King James debates, they're not really bringing up anything new. And usually it's just like, like say CJ Cox, and he's like, Easter's wrong. I'm like, dude, have you read the material that I've written on Easter, in the last 20 years? Like since 2005, I've been talking about Easter, and he just brings it up like, see, it's a mistake, like he just read through a list. It must be an error. And I'm like, dude, please read my material, I was a little bit surprised that some of the things, and even when CJ Cox, he had a recent debate with someone else on the King James, and he brought up all the same issues that I brought up, which I answered to him, but he didn't go, okay, well, I'll study those things and look them out, research them to the nth degree. He was just like, no, I'm just going to throw up the same issues. And so I really need a drink of water. My throat sounds like I've been smoking cigarettes for 40 years. It's better. And so, some of these debates, it's like, people on the King James side are like, wow, what are they going to throw at us this time? And it's like, really? You're going to go with these, issues that were answered like 20 years ago, that you just haven't bothered to look them up or Google them? And even if you were debating against me, wouldn't you type in Nick Sayers, and arguments, or watch some previous videos where I say, hey, I've got a lot of information about Easter. Go through all that. I put it in videos. You just have to sit down and watch the videos and get maybe an hour and a half of watching my videos, on normal running time on Easter, and you pretty much get everything that I believe on it. And so then you don't have to look like he's basically arguing like I've just come up with the idea. And because, CJ Cox, I went back through some of his videos to find out what he was talking about. He'd only recently discovered about the quartodecimans and their relationship with Easter. So I'm like, okay, you've sort of discovered this like 2 months before. And then it's just this issue that he's going to school me on. And I'm like, man, I was talking about this stuff in 2005, like, please elevate the debate level up a bit higher. And that's why I really want to debate people who have a little bit of substance, rather than just rehashing, oh, that's a good question, and it's never been answered. Just go to Will Kinney's site. He's got a ton of answers. And, even the Bible for Today website, the KJVtoday.net website, there's links all over my website. Okay, so how does Matthew 1:1 generation relate to Genesis 5:1, the book of Adam's generation, or vice versa? So, very good question. In Genesis chapter, I might just show these verses. So Genesis 2:4. So the Hebrew word here is Toledoth, where it has, in the King James, it has the generations. So these are the generations of the heaven and the earth when they were created. But it doesn't have like a genealogical list there. But what it is, it's what has come from after the heavens and the earth were made. This is what was produced from that event happening. And then it goes on to talk about in Genesis 2, Genesis 3, and it's got a whole bunch of material there. So this is, sort of like the written account of all that came forward from the heavens and the earth. So what generated out of that happening, okay? So then if we go to Genesis 5:1, I'll just try and sneak that in there, 5:1, here we go. So it's talking about humans now. And so then it would say, this is the book of the generations of Adam. So it's not just a genealogy of Adam. The generations of Adam include a genealogy, but it's what happened also to Adam. Okay, so it's what has generated from Adam. Okay, so this is the book of all that Adam produced, the book of all that Adam generated. Okay, so when we're moving on from the general creation and fall and things like that, let's look at this, the book of what Adam generated. Here's a list of all the kids that he had and grandkids and all the rest of it, genealogy. But then we're also looking at, from Adam came these particular characters, and this is what they did. And so I guess it is part of it. There is a genealogy involved there, but there is one place where this word, I think this is the generation, or these are the generations of Jacob, but then it doesn't have a genealogy. It just has the history of Jacob. So I think you can sort of get that point where it's not just synonymous with the genealogy. Okay. Now I should really find that, where that is. Maybe I can look at the Hebrew. And we'll go to the Englishman's Concordance. These are the generations of Noah, these are the generations of the sons of Noah. So sometimes this would automatically include a genealogical list, but we're going to see that sometimes it doesn't. According to the generations of Isaac, now I'm pretty sure it's Jacob. Generations of Esau, I think it's this one here. Okay, so Genesis 37. We'll just go there and go King James Version. And go Control F and Gen E. Yeah. So these are the generations of Jacob. And notice there's no genealogical list there. It just says Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding, the flock, and so it goes through a whole bunch of stuff about the dreams and all that. So basically, you can paraphrase this as these are the events that came about because a person called Jacob existed. So hopefully you sort of got that. And I'm only coming to full understanding of this myself with the definition of generations in Matthew 1:1, and how the New King James says genealogy there, and how that's an error, and so how the ramifications of that throughout Scripture. So that would be an interesting verse to see how that's translated. Yeah, it has here, these are the records of the generations of Jesus in the New American Standard, where earlier the New American Standard seems to have the records, so they seem to have the word generations here according to their genealogies. Okay, that's interesting. Some New American Standard seems a little bit closer, and it would be interesting because these guys would write why they think it should be written like that. So I'm just going to go to Genesis 5:1 because I've never noticed that the New American Standard does that. Okay, so we don't want to be in the Hebrew, but we're just waiting for that to load up. I assume that's still loading, or maybe that is just the Hebrew. Genesis. To here, that's where I want to go. So let's have a look at what they say here. This is a written account of Adam's family line, so that would be in line with the genealogy. This is the written account of the descendants of Adam, genealogy. English Standard Version. This is the book of the generations of Adam. So that's I'm surprised that it's got that there. I just assumed that they all had genealogy there. So now there has to be someone would have written about this about the ESV having this and New American Standard having this, and so that would be an interesting issue to look at. And I have found some books that talk about this issue in a modern sense, and very rarely do they relate to Matthew 1. And I did download some books recently, but I've forgotten where I've actually placed them. So, but if so this is going to be the final video of Matthew 1:1. Then we're going to move on next time. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read through the modern versions. That's the last thing I'm going to do. And then we're just going to move on. If anything else needs to be done to Matthew 1:1. So these will all go on the Matthew 1:1 playlist, okay? And so if anyone wants to know about Matthew 1:1, they can listen to, my six videos or 5 videos, whatever I've got on that. And then I'm going to move on to Matthew, chapter 1, verse 2, then verse 3. And so obviously some of these are just going to be one video. Some of these are going to be 10 videos. If we get to 1 John 5:7, it might be 1,000 videos, but I've already sort of started doing videos on that because I know it's such a huge topic. Okay, so that's very interesting. Yeah, so here we have generation. I might even just type in Control F, generations. Okay, wow. So the amplified, it's very interesting. Let's go down to some of the commentaries here. I know are New American Standard. Maybe it's the actual Strong's number. Okay, so I'll go back to the Hebrew. We're already in the Hebrew here. Yeah, so it has NASB translation, account, birth, genealogical registration, genealogies. Okay. So they've sort of got everything written there. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out as well, if we go to Matthew 1:1, okay, Bible Hub. Now, I'm hoping that this comes up here and we can clearly see it. But if I go to the Greek, this is something that I felt like I'd forgotten to say in the previous videos, which goes, it's a very important thing, and it goes back to the definition of genealogy here. So here we have Genesios, okay, which is basically from Genesis, so it's pretty easy to remember. But here they have, okay, it means birth, it means lineage, it means descent, and so it actually means none of those things. So that's why it's been redefined, okay. So they've got the Genesis with one nu there, which is akin to Matthew 1:1, so that redefines this. But they didn't redefine this verse because the birth of Jesus Christ, the context is so strong there that it's like you can't really change that. But it has the record of the genealogy of Jesus. Okay, New American Standard is like, oh, it's a birth, so they've redefined that. So we've gone through that in the last 4 or 5 videos, and so I think I've made a pretty strong case for that. But you notice here, Luke 1:4, the Greek here, it's the same word, but with the stem, with the inflection is only changed. It doesn't have the King James. That's because this word only appears in the critical text. And so let's go to Luke 1:14, and we'll examine this in the Greek. I'll just go down to additional parallel Greek. This shows the B's at 1598 as well. Okay, so down the bottom here, notice you've got the Genesis with the 2 nus. The other ones don't have that extra nu. So the Genesis with the 2 nus always means birth, okay? Usually, as far as I know, so that's why it's many will rejoice at his birth. But when it's, okay, we're changing the underlying Greek here, there's no other context that can really be. And so that redefines here, it must mean birth, the birth of Jesus in Matthew 1:1. So that verse there doesn't have the King James. That verse there doesn't have the King James, but they're both birth in the critical text. So then we go to James 1:23, and we see it has Genesios, and so that's exactly how it appears in Matthew 1:1. Now it's in the King James, so that's how it appears in the critical text and in the Textus Receptus, and the same for Matthew 3:6 here. So how is this translated? It's beholding his natural face. So natural face, the face that he was that he has, the face that he was given by God, his natural face. And here it has the course of nature. Okay. So just knowing that the word is Genesis, and we have the book of Genesis, beholding his Genesis face, the course of Genesis. And so obviously Genesis is the book of beginnings, beholding his face that he was given in the beginning, the course of what started in the beginning. And so one thing that I remember that I've forgotten to do, and so I think I'm going to have to add this on. Actually, this might even be a whole nother program for Matthew 1:1. So I might have to next week actually do another one on Matthew 1:1, where I'm going to define all of these words. And so in Matthew 1, we're going to look at everywhere the word vivlos appears, everywhere genesios appears, probably not everywhere where Jesus appears because it's everywhere, but we'll look at some of the issues involved. Yesu Christu, we are David, we are Abraham. So we'll just go through the important ones there. We'll brief through some of the other ones, and we'll look at the biblical examples and the biblical way of defining these. And so we're still going to be in Matthew 1:1 next week. So how I'm going to finish this off today is I'm going to go through and we are going to read Matthew 1:1 in all the modern Bibles. Now, I started to do this, I think it was last week, but I just got caught up in some other stuff and just completely forgot to do it. And so I was busy doing something. I was like, actually, I started doing that. But I was glad that I forgot, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to open these up individually, because some of these have marginal notes, and that's what we want to look at, is not just what they're saying directly in the text, but we want to look at the marginal notes and see how that affects everything. So basically, just before we get into that, what I was saying before about Genesis appearing in Luke and appearing in Matthew 1:18. So basically in the critical text, the Genesis with one nu appears 5 times. In the TR, it appears only 3 times. So by having these other 2 places added, which you can't really translate it any other way but birth, that modifies how Genesis 1:1 is translated. Okay. So Bluey said, thanks, Nick. It's also interesting that David's lineage comes from Bathsheba and not his other wives. Yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so what I will do, I'll start going through these. I'm just going to open up a few of these tabs, maybe 4 at a time. We're going to go through all of them. Okay, so the 21st century King James Version. So I'm pretty sure this is by J. Green. Duell Enterprises. I've never heard of that. So it just has the book of the generation, Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. That's fine. So it doesn't have any other issue there. Here we have the American Standard Version. So we saw the Revised Standard, or the Standard Version, or Revised Version, I should say, of 1881. They had these similar footnotes. So we have the book, and then it has or genealogy of Jesus Christ, of the generation, or birth, as in verse 18, and also we just saw it in Luke as well. There's the word birth, meaning similar thing, of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So while it has the exact words of the King James here, these footnotes sort of destroy the definition. And so this is where someone like Matthew Everhard, explain this. if he ever watched this, explain this. The it's butchering our Bible. It's redefining things. It's causing massive confusion. So that's why we dislike these footnotes. We dislike dishonest footnotes and footnotes that promote corruption and contradiction. Okay, so the Amplified Bible has a record of the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son, descendant of David, the son, descendant of Abraham. So it's got a few footnotes here. Yeshua, Joshua, meaning the Lord is salvation. Okay, that's true. Messiah, the Greek Christos, Greek for Messiah, which means anointed one, throughout the gospel, which is directed primarily to Jewish believers. I mean, that is debatable. I understand a lot of people will say, oh, yeah, Matthew, it's written to the Jews, but I would say I'm getting just as much out of it as I believe a Jewish person would. There might be, a few things in Matthew, there might be idioms and things like that, but obviously he was a Jewish guy writing about a Jewish historical event, so it's going to have Jewish elements in it. But I believe this is written for all mankind. But it does say primarily to Jewish. So, and that's one of the main things with understanding the Word of God, is that it was written by Jews and primarily to Jews. So, yeah, I would have to concede. Matthew uses Old Testament scripture to emphasize the fact that Jesus is their promised Messiah. Okay, so then it's got the descendant of David, the shepherd boy who killed the Philistine giant Goliath and later became the king of Israel. So they're the footnotes. They're not really to do with text criticism or anything like that. So this is the Amplified Bible. And then we've got the Amplified Bible Classic Edition. So the book of the ancestry, genealogy of Jesus Christ, Messiah, and the anointed, the son, descendant of David, the son, descendant of Abraham. Aha, yes, thank you very much for that. The punctuation at the end of the verse. So I'll just open these back up, because I did point out that there's a full stop when I'm saying that this is like a statement verse, like a heading. In the King James, it has the full stop. So we see the Amplified Classic Edition has the full stop. The KJV 21 edition has the full stop. The American Standard Version has the full stop. And the other Amplified version. Okay, so see how it has the colon, and so then it's like this is a heading of this. Well, when it's got the full stop, it's a statement. When there is a continuation here, and so all of these other verses that go underneath this verse are relative to that. Where yeah, so yeah, thanks for pointing that out. That's a very good point, because it's very important to see that. Okay, so we might open up, say, 5 here. 1, 2, 3. I haven't even heard of half of these Bibles. There's just so many. The BRG, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. I have no idea what the BRG is. Blue, red, and gold edition. It might just be, it's a King James Bible, so no wonder. Christian Standard Bible. The account of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And so in verse 2 to 16, either a son as here or later descendant. So that's verse 2, so it doesn't really apply. Common English Bible has a record of the ancestors. Actually, I'm doing the same thing, and I'm not. Oh, actually, what I can do, because it's all written here, at the end, I'll go through the full stop, because I'm obviously forgetting it. So I've got sometimes the memory of a goldfish, and I just forget what's right in front of me. So I'll go through and I'll point out where these ones have the full stop in them. So Here we have the CEV, a record of the ancestors of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. The Complete Jewish Bible. This is the genealogy of Yeshua, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Okay, and the CEV. Jesus Christ came from the family of King David and also from the family of Abraham. And this is a list of his ancestors. From Abraham to King David, his ancestors were, and so you can see that's where most modern Bibles are heading, into that type of thing, where you can see that the whole standalone concept is gone from there. Okay, so let's continue on. Darby, I might just open a heap of them. Okay. So this is Darby, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham. So it doesn't have the son, and that's capitalized there. Disciples, literal New Testament, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham. So notice the is in italics, which is totally unnecessary if you understand Greek properly. The anarthrus, and it doesn't have the son. It is son of David. So, and notice the italics here. They're unnecessary italics. It's ridiculous. So here it has the book of the genealogy, or generation, account, taking this as a title for the whole book. So we would take it as a title for the whole book, but yeah, so they have that. So it's a little bit confusing. How can it be a book of a genealogy and then it's about the whole book? There's the whole book of genealogy. That doesn't really make much sense. So that you can see the confusion that happens there. And so, okay, let's continue on here. Dwayne Reams, 1899, the book of the generation Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And they have the ending like that. So same as the King James, different ending. Easy to read version. This is the family history of Jesus the Messiah. He came from the family of David, who was from the family of Abraham. Well, at least they've got the full stop there. The Evangelical Heritage Version, a record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Okay. English Standard Version, most popular ones, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So I'm not sure why they would not capitalize that. I don't read the ESV much, just except to check, some readings. So perhaps they don't do the titles as much, like son of David, son of Abraham, with a capital S. But definitely in the New King James, it's got that. English Standard Version, anglicized, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Okay, so that was the UK edition. This is the Expanded Bible. This is the family history, record of the ancestors' genealogy, book of the offspring family, perhaps a title for the entire book. So you can see the confusion there. They're saying, well, this. So that's been the two options usually. It's a genealogical list or it's about the whole book. And so we would agree with this, not perhaps, it's a title for the entire book. Of Jesus Christ, the Messiah, he came from the family of David, and David came from the family of Abraham. The son of David, the son of Abraham, son can mean descendant. So I would agree with all that. This would be more so a commentary. I wouldn't say that that's a Bible. Okay, but it is called the Expanded Bible. But I would disagree with family history. And so that's quite interesting that it's got that. So I'll just go to Matthew 1:1, where the Jehovah's Witness Bible actually translate that. So if we go down to here, The Jehovah's Witnesses have history here. So Genesis in Greek, Toledoth in Hebrew. At Genesis 2:4, the expression could not refer to the generations of the heaven and of the earth, because those inanimate creations could not of themselves generate anything. So they've got a point. They translated this history, but then, like most modern Bibles, they get confused and they say it means birth. It means, but this is in the Jehovah's Witness material itself, and so this was actually in their Kingdom Interlinear translation, which is very handy to have if you're disputing with Jehovah's Witnesses. But so yeah, it does talk about like the book, the history of Jesus. So that is more accurate than the New King James. So imagine that. I'm not sure what the new. I should look it up. JW.org. Look up Matthew 1. Bible Online. Okay, and so we'll go to Matthew 1. Yeah, the book of the history. And then it has obviously the usual sort of footnote. I might have to click on that actually. Oh yeah, here we are. Or genealogy, line of descent or origin. Okay. But the book of the history of Jesus Christ, the son of David, son, that is way more accurate than the New King James. So how's that? When people say to me, the Jehovah's Witness Bible is terrible and all this, it's like, have you done a verse by verse comparison? And here it doesn't destroy the whole narrative. And so the history of Jesus Christ, and then it's got like, this is part of his history, but it's part of the history of his father. At least it doesn't say this is a genealogy of Jesus. And so quite interesting. And that's the Jehovah's Witness Bible. So that's why I've written a fair bit about that on my website. Like, listen to this. It is true that a genealogy at once follows, but it is not that of a generation from Jesus Christ. It is a partial list of his forefathers only from Abraham onwards. So they sort of get it half right. It's quite interesting that a cult can sort of see through some of these things better than the critical text versions. Okay, so yeah, that was the expanded Bible. So I'll shut that down. Okay, so let's go through these. I'll open up 10, 3, 4, 5, 6, the Phillips Bible, 7, 8. We've got the King James and Authorized King James. I'm not sure why they have King James, Authorized King James, red letter King James. It's just like, maybe have them all in one or something. It just can be quite confusing, and people are like, what's the difference between the Authorized King James and the King James and the 1900 King James and the 1611 just trying to make out there's all these editions of the King James, and you look at it and they say the same thing. Look at this. So this is the Holman's. So this was going to be a TR based Bible, the Holman's. Okay, but then at the last minute they said, no, let's go with the critical text. The historical record of Jesus Christ. So I would agree with that far more. So that agrees with the Jehovah's Witnesses there. So there's the historical record of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Okay, but then they have the colon there. So we have the book of the genealogy. Okay, so on my website, I'll just go back. I do have a list of here. English versions compared. Following generation, we have all those. Following history, we have all those. And following genealogy, we have those. Okay, so that gives you a bit of an understanding. So obviously, I believe this is a correct definition. The history is okay, but I think that sort of destroys the other places where generation occurs, like say in Genesis 5:1, and we looked at Jacob where it has the same word, and so we should be uniform in that. So having history, it's more accurate than genealogy, but sorry, no first prize there. But dead last are these ones, and that includes the New King James Version. Footnote has generation, but it's like, sorry, in the main text, it's wrong. And yeah, I point out where the semicolon, the King James has that, New King James has that. So, and the difference in the wording there. So let's continue on. Okay, so the Geneva Bible. And we've sort of looked at this recently, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Jesus Christ came of Abraham, of the tribe of Judah, and of the stock of David, as God promised. Rehearsal, as the Hebrews used to speak in Genesis 5:1, book of the generations. Okay, so of the ancestors of whom Christ came, which Christ is also the son of Abraham. So yeah, I would be in agreement with those notes. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So it's 1599 Geneva Bible notes. So God's Word translation. This is a list of the ancestors of Jesus Christ, descendant of David and Abraham. Okay, with a full stop. Good News Translation. This is a list of the ancestors of Jesus Christ, a descendant of David, who was a descendant of Abraham. And this is the Holman Christian Standard. I think I had already looked at this, but yeah, the historical record of Jesus Christ. Yeah, for some reason I kept that one up there. Sorry about that. The International Children's Bible. This is the family history of Jesus Christ. He came from the family of David. David came from the family of Abraham. So the family history, that would just be equivalent to genealogy. Okay. The International Standard Version. This is a record of the life of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Matthew 1:1. The Greek lacks "this is." Yeah, because I mean, nearly all of that is just not reality. But look at this, the International Standard Version. Okay, so this is one that's used by lots of people and considered an amazing Bible. This is a record of the life of Jesus the Messiah. Now, that's quite amazing that they've got this reading. So what would you say? That's ISV. I wonder if they've got some sort of paraphrase to that, or a commentary, I should say. SV. Bible Hub. Bible Gateway. Okay, so it doesn't have that ISV. Oops. Harmony of the Gospels in Scrivener, so that's good. I'm subscribed to Scrivener. Okay, Harmony of the Gospels in the International Standard Version Greek. So I'm just going to quickly look that up because I do have a Scrivener subscription. Harmony of the Gospels Gospels. It's by Stephen Cox, I think. No, it's not. Well, view all books. Okay, well, I can't find it at the moment, and I don't want to bore you guys to tears. So let's move on. But interesting. So, yeah, it has the whole entire book there because I'm with Scribd on here as well. So let's have a quick look at what was I actually looking for. This is a record. I'll just type in record of the life. Find. Okay, well, actually, maybe it's just going to go through, okay, harmony of the Gospels, okay, NRK and Logos, Vivlos Kinesios, here we are. In the beginning, the Word existed. This is a record of the life of Jesus the Messiah, okay. Okay, so they don't seem to have footnotes. Yeah, so it's just like a harmony of the Gospels. Oh, yeah, here it is, the footnotes. So it's not really a commentary. It's just showing, okay, this Greek matches up with this Greek here. And so that's of interest. Anyway, I've sort of rabbit trailed down there, so I'll shut that down. But yeah, this is a record of the life. So that's much better than genealogy. Very good. You're halfway there. Good on you guys. Halfway. That's better than being having an error. The Phillips translation. This is the record of the ancestry of Jesus Christ, who was the descendant of both David and Abraham, semicolon. Okay, so the J.B. Phillips. It's interesting that J.B. Phillips said that he actually talked with C.S. Lewis, but C.S. Lewis was dead, and so he talked to the spirit of C.S. Lewis. It's quite interesting. Google that. Jubilee Bible 2000, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham, same as the King James. King James, obviously, it's got the correct reading there. The authorized King James has the correct reading there. Okay, so let's go through the LEV, TLB, the Message, MEV, Mounts, NOG, not an MOG, and NOG. Okay, we'll just crack open all these. We'll go down to their NIV, or the New King James. That'll be the next one off the rank. Next cab off the rank. Lexham English Bible, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham, agreeing with the New King James, has the full stop, but sorry, no prize. The Living Bible, these are the ancestors of Jesus Christ, a descendant of King David and of Abraham. Sorry, no prize. Message Bible, the family tree of Jesus Christ, David's son, Abraham's son, with a list. There we go. They're all Jesus's relatives, apparently. Sorry, no prize. Modern English Version, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David. They capitalize son, but they don't son of Abraham. That's interesting. I thought they capitalized both. Okay, so that's the 2014 edition. All right. But yeah, they have genealogy, so no prize. And people are like, why don't you go with the Textus Receptus Bibles like the New King James, the NMEV? First verse, first cab off the rank, got a mistake in it. That's why. it's not hard to figure out. Okay, so Mount's reverse interlinear New Testament. The record, Biblos, of the origin, Genesis. So notice here he's got the origin. So that is actually better than the genealogy. Okay, so the book of the origin, or the record of the origin of Jesus Christ. But this is a Gnostic type of thing, because does Jesus have an origin? I mean, Jesus Christ coming in the flesh, yes, but Jesus Christ himself having an origin, we point out that when it says in Micah, Micah chapter 5, verse 1. So I think it's in verse 2. It is. It says, "But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, but thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me that is a ruler, that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from old, from everlasting." So notice it's his goings forth have been from old, from everlasting. Okay. So how old? From eternity. Okay. Now, even the New King James, it says that. But when you look at, say, the NIV, whose origins are from old, does Christ have an origin? Is he a created God? Like the Jehovah's Witnesses teach? Is he, like an angel, Michael the Archangel, whose origins here? Now, even the ESV saw this as a problem, so they have whose comings forth is from old, from ancient days, but it should say from eternity, from everlasting. But here it has origins, it has eternity. So you can see these new Bibles just mess everything up. They have these origins, okay? So when we're looking at, the record of the origin of Jesus, it's like, well, sorry, Mounts, my Jesus doesn't have an origin. He is Jehovah the Son. You can have a watered down Jesus who is Michael the Archangel or whatever. It's like, sorry, your Bible is causing problem. And Jehovah's Witnesses would read that and go, yes, there we go. Jesus has an origin. Or a Unitarian. Names of God Bible. This is a list of the ancestors of Yeshua Christ, descendant of David, descendant of Abraham, full stop. And so it's not a list of the ancestors of Jesus Christ. It's a list of the ancestors of Joseph. No cookie for you. New American Bible, so NAB, Revised Edition, NABRE. The Infancy Narrative. Headline, the genealogy of Jesus. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham, with a footnote B. So it's got quite a lot written here. The infancy narrative forms the prologue of the gospel. So they're saying the whole genealogy is like the prologue for the gospel. We're saying no, verse 1 is. Consisting of a genealogy and 5 stories, it presents coming of Jesus as the climax of Israel's history, and the events of his conception, birth, and early childhood as the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy. The genealogy is probably traditional material that Matthew edited. It is first in 2 sections. It's drawn from Ruth. So Matthew 1, 2 to 11 is from these places. From 12 to 16 is found in the Old Testament, any Old Testament genealogy. While the genealogy shows the continuity of God's providential plan from Abraham on, discontinuity is also present. The woman, Tamar, 1:3, Rahab, Ruth, the wife of Uriah, Bathsheba, bore their sons through unions that were in varying degree strange and unexpected. So that's why these people were mentioned, because it's the cursed line of Joseph. These irregularities culminate in the supreme irregularity of the Messiah's birth of a virgin mother. The age of fulfillment is inaugurated by a creative act of God. Drawing upon both biblical traditions and Jewish stories, Matthew portrays Jesus as reliving the Exodus experience of Israel and the persecutions of Moses. His rejection by his own people and his passion are foreshadowed by the troubling reaction of all Jerusalem. So I'm not going to read through all that. It's sort of moving on apart from what we want to talk about. The son of David, the son of Abraham. These two links of the genealogical chain are singled out. Although the later David is placed first in order to emphasize that Jesus is the royal Messiah, the mention of Abraham may be due not only to his being the father of the nation Israel, but to Matthew's interest in the universal scope of Jesus' mission. Your descendants, all the nations of the earth shall find blessing. Okay, so that's got some good information there. It's just like a commentary, I guess. So anyway, let's move on. NASB, the record of the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. It has the book, the Hebrew Joshua, meaning the Lord of salvation, from Christos, which means Messiah, Hebrew for anointed one. Okay, no biscuit for you. The genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, no. The record of the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And so this is the NASB 1995, so it's got pretty much the same notes. Literally book, Hebrew, Yeshua, Joshua, meaning the Lord saves. Greek, Christos, Christ, Greek for Messiah, which means anointed one. And so, yes, let's move on. Genealogy of Jesus. So this is the NCB, the New Catholic Bible. Let's see how the Catholics fare. The account of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Well, at least they put the full stop there, but they've got a genealogy here. So, and it's the account. Okay, so To the ancients, a genealogical tree was not only a set of data, but one's civil status, and also a manifestation of one's membership in a community, and the importance of ancestry. And so it's talking a lot about that. So it's basically a commentary, but it's worth having a look at one time. But I don't think I'll really want to read what the Roman Catholics think that much about that. The New Century Version has, this is the family tree of Jesus Christ. He came from the family of David, and David came from the family of Abraham. So if they just had history there, yeah, that would be closer, but it's the family history. The Net Bible, let's see how Dan Wallace does this. This is the record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So genealogy is wrong. He has Greek, the book of the genealogy, the noun vivlos, although it is without the article, it is to be translated as definite due to Apollonius's corollary and the normal use of anarthrous nouns in titles. And so I would be in agreement with that, where it has the book instead of just book or record. And it's just how you translate Greek. And so, but he has genealogy there, so that's wrong. New International Reader's Version, the line of the family line of Jesus the Messiah. This is the written story of the family line of Jesus the Messiah. So if it had, this is the written story of the life of Jesus the Messiah, you would agree with that, but unfortunately, no biscuit for you. NIV. the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah. This is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Genealogy, or is an account of the origin, or Jesus Christ, Hebrew Messiah, Greek Christ, both mean anointed one. Also in verse 18, so they have that link to verse 18, which is not a TR reading. But they are actually not going from genealogy there. They're talking about Messiah. So talking about Christ or Messiah. So, okay, so that's fine. But yeah, the origin, that's bad. Genealogy, that's bad. And why not call him Jesus Christ? What's wrong with that? Why the Messiah? Okay. NIV UK edition. This is genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, son of David, son of Abraham, semicolon. This is an account of the origin, or Jesus Christ, Messiah, Hebrew, and Christ, Greek, both mean anointed one, also in verse 18. So pretty much exactly the same. Okay, so where did we leave off? New King James. New King James, NLV, NLT, NMB. It's just so many different ones. Okay, let's see if we can get down to there. New King James Version, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Literally generation. Well, why not put generation in there, guys? No biscuit for the New King James translators. New Life Version. These are the families through which Jesus Christ came. He came through David and Abraham. Okay, so no, this is not the families of who Jesus Christ came. Wrong wording there, probably one of the worst. NLT, the ancestors of Jesus the Messiah. This is a record of the ancestors of Jesus the Messiah, descendant of David, a descendant of Abraham, semicolon. Has Greek, Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Okay, so if that's the Greek, why not be literal? Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. That's what the King James reads. I guess they're trying to make out that, literally, the King James, yeah, and we're just trying to help you, a descendant of David and Abraham. Okay, so the NMB has a genealogy of Christ and marriage of his mother Mary. The angel satisfies Joseph's mind. This is the account of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son also of Abraham. The New Matthew Bible. I wonder if that's like, I remember hearing there was a new Matthew Bible. Yeah, the Matthew's Bible. As if that's got anything to do with the Matthew's Bible. Still trying to have this historical link to Coverdale and the Matthew's Bible. That, to me, that's just weird. Because this is an account of the genius. It's not even close. Anyway, I guess money's to be made. New Revised Standard Version, anglicized. The genealogy of Jesus the Messiah. An account of the genealogy, wrong, of Jesus the Messiah. Should just say Christ, why not? But that's okay. The son of David, the son of Abraham. So, dung dung. No prize for you. Or birth. No, that's a wrong definition. It would work in 118, but not in 1:1. It has Jesus the Messiah or Jesus Christ. Well, New Revised Standard Version, Anglicized Catholic Edition, the NRSVACE. So what's your favorite version? The NRSV. So the account of the genealogy, wrong, or birth of Jesus the Messiah, Jesus Christ, same thing really. Just they're probably just like, oh, let's call it the Catholic edition, and they probably word a few things differently when they get to like communion or something, and make it more palatable for the Catholics. Cha-ching. Okay, so whoops, did I shut the wrong page? No, I didn't. Looks like that's pretty much the same. New Revised Standard Version, Catholic edition. Or was that what I just read? So you got they look exactly the same. So I'm not going to just keep going over the same things. So yeah, we have this one here, New Revised Standard Version, Catholic edition. The New Revised Standard Version, Updated Edition, an account or book of genealogy or birth, wrong, of Jesus the Messiah or Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham. Okay. New Testament for everyone. The book of the family tree of Jesus Christ the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. It's not a family tree of Jesus. There are people in that list who are not related to Jesus at all. Matisyahu, I wonder if Matisyahu, the singer, knows that he's got a Bible I guess it's just Matthew. Yeah. This is the Sefer Toledoth of a Rabbi Melech HaMoshiach, or Melech HaMoshiach, Yehoshua ben David ben Abraham. Okay, so it's just a Romanized way of looking at the Hebrew there. So, but I'm glad that they've got Sefer Toledoth, because that is pretty much exactly, Toledoth is related to Genesis chapter 2 verse 4 and also Genesis 5:1. So this is Sefer, it means book. This is the book of the generation of teacher, the Messiah, Melech, Hamashiach. No, that's Messiah, Melech. Anyway, interesting. Orthodox Jewish Bible. The revised, so the Orthodox Jewish Bible, that would be mostly sort of written for people who are sort of learning Hebrew or whatever, but it was better than the others if you translate that properly into English. Revised Geneva translation, a book of the lineage of Jesus Christ. Notice they got a revised Matthew, revised Geneva. Book of the lineage of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Sorry. Wrong. Revised Standard Version, genealogy of Jesus the Messiah. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham. Same as the New King James, no prize for you. Revised Standard Version, Catholic edition, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, son of David, the son of Abraham. With a footnote, the genealogy is given to show that Jesus had the descent required for messiahship. Why would they have this genealogy for him to be the Messiah? If the following is a genealogy when one of the guys is cursed and no one will ever sit on the throne of David who is related to him, i.e. from Abraham and in particular from David the king. So if you're just talking about verse 1, that's fine. But obviously this word modifies it, so it's talking about from verse 2 to verse 17. Okay, so we're nearly there. The NTE, the OJB, the RGT, the RSV, the RSVCE, the TLV. I'm getting dyslexia here. The Voice, the Web, the We. Okay, and we've pretty much nailed all of them. Jesus' genealogy. The book of the family tree of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Sorry. Well, that was the New Testament for everyone. I think I'd already read that. I must have just left it in the mix. Orthodox Jewish Bible, yeah, we went through that. Revised Geneva, yeah, I went through that. Wasn't I closing the pages? Revised Standard Version, the Book of the Genealogy of Jesus Christ. I'm pretty sure I went through that too. And the Catholic edition, I did. Okay, Tree of Life version. Forefathers of Yeshua, the Messiah. Sounds pretty, like these guys are studying full on, but they have the Book of the Genealogy. The Greek term is Genesis. Well, at least they're omitting that instead of saying the Greek term means birth, Book of the Genealogy of Yeshua HaMashiach ben David ben Abraham. Okay, so they say genealogy, no prize for the Tree of Life version. The Voice. This is the story of Jesus, the son of David, the anointed one, as told by Matthew, a disciple of the Lord. Okay, that's an introduction. This is the family history, the genealogy of Jesus, the anointed, the coming king. You'll see this history that Jesus is descended from King David and that he is also descended from Abraham. So they're trying to make out that this is a summary of what follows, which is wrong. It's not a family history. It's not a genealogy. And the following history is not relative to Jesus, but to Joseph. Okay, so the Web Bible, World English Bible, I'm pretty sure this is based upon the majority text. It was one of those ones where it's like, the majority text finally has a Bible, because people are majority text. And it's like, okay, so where's your Bible? And they're like, oh, we don't really have one. And so now they've made this one, the Web. It's public domain. The Book of the Genealogy of Jesus Christ. See footnote A. Messiah, Hebrew, and Christ, Greek, both mean anointed one. The son of David, the son of Abraham. Has genealogy. Web Bible, out the door. Worldwide English, New Testament, WE. Here are the names of the people in a family line from which Jesus came. He came from David's family. He came from Abraham's family. So, yeah, that's... Where do you start? There's just so much wrong with that. But, yeah, let's continue. Wycliffe, Bible, the Book of the Generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. It's exactly what the King James reads. Good on you, Wycliffe. You did a good job. Young's literal translation, YLT, a roll of the birth of Jesus Christ, the son of David, son of Abraham. Yeah, so literal that you just lose the whole meaning of everything, and it becomes a roll of just a little mini scroll. Here's a mini scroll, and it's just got this genealogical list, and it's like it's just confusion. Anyway, so here's all the copyrights for all that. And so I just want to make the disclaimer that if anyone, wants to say that these are copyrighted, well, I've got it from this website and we're just studying through this. We're not making any money from this. We are just looking and comparing Bible versions. We're doing a Bible study. This is a personal Bible study. So, so there we go. Let me shut that. Actually, we're going to quickly go through. One way that I can look at the semicolons is if I go find, so we have there, full stop there, full stop. So it's quite a lot of them have the semicolon. Just have a line there. Full stop. Not really sure. Full stop, I guess. Full stop, semicolon. The Holman Christian Standard Bible, Phillips has that one. Those 4 have the full stop, and those 3 have the colon. Those 3 have the full stop. Those 2 have the colon. Those 4 have the full stop. those 5, except for the middle one, the NLT, have the colon. Then you've got these ones, New Revised Standard Version, all have the full stop down to the RSVCE. Then you have the colon here, and then you've got the rest of them are full stops. So there we go. Now, so what am I going to do next time? My voice is almost gone. So what I'm going to do next time is I'm going to go back to the basics, okay? With everything that we've looked at, everything that we've learnt, we're going to go through and we're going to define the word book here. And we're going to look at vivlos and where this appears in Scripture. So I've got a little bit written on this on my website. It's used in Matthew 1:1, Mark 12:26, Luke 3:4, and other places. So we're going to look at these contexts. We're going to read them. We're going to understand where vivlos is, what it means, how it's used, and how Bibles in the past, English Bibles in the past, have used that term, and how we're going to look at the grammar, that it's a noun, it's nominative, singular, it's feminine. We're going to be looking at those issues. So it's probably going to take just a whole lesson just to explain, trying to get to the bottom, explain this interlinear, the book, and explain exactly what these words mean. I know that goes off the page just because I've enlarged it so everyone can see it. So yeah, we're going to go through, we're going to look at where these names appear. And we're basically we're going to, with all the understanding that we have now of this verse, we're going to look at the underlying Greek, we're going to look at the English words, and we're just going to do a general Bible study on this. So I think we've laid enough groundwork for Matthew 1:1. Now we can go through and we can see how these words are defined in their context, in the biblical context, in Greek, in the biblical context, in English, and that will be our next lesson. So that'll be good. So I'm going to go. So we've gone for 3 hours and 22 minutes. Thanks for everyone who has stuck through this long. And I'll try through the week to do a few more videos. I might actually do a video on the Matthew Everhard interview that he did with Dane Johansson and Brett Mayen. And so I'm going to go through that. I think that would be an interesting one to go through, because I just sort of felt that there was a little bit of, I would call it, compromise with some of these guys. Now, I'm good friends with these guys, but I'm going to call a spade, and just say I think that they're trying. These guys are sort of reformed, and they're all. It's sort of like, oh, we're of the same group, guys. Are you going to rock the boat? You're going to tip the boat upside down, are you? And it's like, oh no, we don't want to rock the boat that much, and we use the New King James. We don't find any problems with it, and all this. And I'm like, how can you not find problem with these? But then they'll mention, it comes from the Syriac and the LXX and all these other things, and it's like, okay, so I guess it just comes down to I can hear a beeping noise. Anyway, not sure where that's coming from. Sounds like a fire alarm. Anyway, yeah, so I'm going to be looking at that, and I'm going to be evaluating that and looking at that video, because I watched it this morning. Actually, it was late last night, and I sort of fell asleep halfway through it, but then woke up and I was like, no, I don't think these guys are being forceful enough. If Matthew Everhard was just sort of like a nobody, he wasn't part of the Presbyterian group, or he wasn't part of a Reform group or whatever, they would have been saying things a little bit differently, I would find. And so I just find that, some of these guys are being nice and being ultra nice, and that's fine. But sometimes you just got to say, hey, no, I believe that Bible is satanic because it has a contradiction in it that would cause an atheist to go, this Bible's stupid. And it has the wrong math, it has the wrong genealogical records, it has the wrong geography, it has problems. And so what do you say when something's that bad? You say it's satanic, So anyway, I'm going to go through that during the week. And so pray for me that, if I turn over a boat and whatever floats, that whatever needs to sink will sink. But hopefully people can follow me with what I'm doing there. So anyway, God bless you guys. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you've enjoyed this, and God bless you. We'll see you next time.